All right. And we are live. Welcome to the Iron Lords podcast, episode number 81. And it's another glorious Sunday, and we're back at the round table on the Lord's Day. I'm extremely excited about our special guest, so we're going to get right into it. I want to introduce a Lord who is not only one of the greatest legal minds throughout the realm, but is also an amazing follow on Twitter for his extremely candid takes within the gaming community. Although his opinions may conflict with some, this Lord is always willing to engage in healthy debate, defines the rules to the game with his outstanding blog posts, and is always willing to help us out with his amazing hashtag, tweets not legal advice. Introducing the attorney and creator of the Hoeg Law Business Law Firm. Recently voted as one of the best lawyers in America for his work in corporate law, and the Lord who championed Star Control Origins as his 2018 Game of the Year. The University of Michigan's own, making his debut into the realm of the Lords. My man, Lord Rick Hoeg. How you doing, sir?
I'm good. Can I take you around to various events?
You just wear them around your neck, Lance.
We get a song going, and you say, "Is that Hope's music I hear?" I think we're ready to go.
You are a lord in your role, so it's only right I had to show you the proper respect here at the round table. How you doing, man?
I'm good. I appreciate that. I like the sentence on may disagree with. That's good. I've only been on Twitter for about a year, and people say things, man.
Listen, man, I love it because one thing about Hoeg I like is that he really makes you think, and he really gets you riled up if you're on either side of the fence. You know what I'm saying? And it's very, very cool to see. So we're gonna get there. Oh, I see King snuck in the door. Oh, I'm happy now. What's up, King? Your levels is good?
It's fantastic. I'm trying to keep it low, get everything set up.
All right, King.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Do apologize.
All good, man. All good. We're glad you made it. Addict, my brother from another mother will be joining in progress. But we have the four horsemen of gaming, those original lords of the realm here at the round table, and of course, the most technical gaming lord. The solo gamer who lives for the single player selfish experience, and also the Sostradamus, Mr. Offline Profile Illuminati, and Lord Patreon of the Iron Bank. My man, Lord Sovereign, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing fantastic this Sunday morning. Doing very, very well. Fall is in full swing. Games are coming out. Yanks in the playoffs. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. Last night, I have to say, I shed a few tears.
Talk to me.
The homage to the captain, the Mets captain, David Wright.
Lovable losers. You want to talk lovable losers?
That was so sad. That was so sad.
You know what?
It really was. It really was. Like everything from his daughter throwing out the first pitch to him, just the way he sort of defers to the crowd and his teammates. Just an amazing dude. Very sad that he couldn't have a long and more prosperous career. Still leaving the organization being number one and number two in a lot of categories, which is amazing unto itself. It was really beautiful thing to see. I wish I tried to get tickets, but I saw the press conference late. So by the time I went to buy tickets, it was sold out, and that place was packed. It looked like Game 7 of the World Series.
It was really. I want to jump in on that because, as a Met fan, when it hit me, Sov, because obviously that team was so talented. They were young, and to see Reyes and him together on that side of the infield, and it just brought back the feel like that was supposed to be the future for them. You know what I mean? And they got to the World Series one. They won one pennant, and it was just like, oh man, But what is cool too is he was so happy to be there. You see, like he really was happy to get on that field. So
he was. I wish he had played the whole game though. I know they had a range only for a couple of innings and a couple of bats, but I wish he had just stayed in the whole game.
Yeah,
I don't think his body would have held up for the rest of the game. So he had to be there. In and out.
You're not wrong.
You're not wrong. Vital stenosis.
Yeah, he did not want to show up and then have to show out for the rest of his life. You understand what I'm saying?
So, real quick, what I'm playing. That Forza Horizon. Oh Lord. Oh, well, I got the I didn't get the ultimate version. I love Forza Horizon, but I'm not a car junkie like that to pay $100 for it. So I went out and I went to my local mom and pop store and
shout out to Mr. Lee.
No,
sounds like it was.
I went to some place that you like, and I got it from them.
That should not be disclosed with legal representation on the show.
No need to mark on him. I got it. That's great.
He's like, yes. So, man, that game. It threw Lara Croft in the bushes for a little while there, man. Like it really did.
I saw you playing Tomb Raider. I said, "Is he on?" I had to rub my eyes. I was like, "Is Sovereign on?"
I told you I'm on. I'm just not talking to anybody. But I'm on. That Forza, man, like a new bar set for open road racing games, like the Crew 2 in the bushes, like it's just no.
That's one of my biggest disappointments of the year, Crew 2. I really enjoyed the first Crew. Not so much the sequel.
The concept was they just haven't they need to hit it out of the park with the concept. They haven't really done it. But
now let me ask you this, because because I haven't picked it up yet. I'm El Cheapo right now. Destiny's taking my life. So my question to you, Sav, is it? Have you tried both modes? Because apparently, is it like a performance mode? Is there 60 frames per second mode as well as I tried like kind of HDR mode, 4K?
I tried both modes during the demo, and what I came away from, I decided to go with 60 right now. I play this game so much, I'll go back and forth. But I'm playing the 60 frames per second mode because the thing for me is, in other games with 60 frames per second modes, they eliminate a lot of the effects and details.
Right,
so that's what I was worried about.
Yeah, right. From Digital Foundry.
So in this mode, you get the resolution downgrade, but the effects is all still there. So the game still looks equally beautiful. And then gotta give a shout out to the Samsung QLEDs, like the upscaling ability of our TVs, like the game still looks absolutely phenomenal. Like it does.
What are you talking about?
Oh, he can't add to the building. Here he is.
Here we go.
There we go. We'll finish up.
He was talking big money talk. He was talking big money talk.
4K talk. Not you. We're not talking about it.
We're talking. We're not talking about to you, 1080p man.
Oh my God, it's terrible. But that's it. That's all you've been rocking.
Yeah. Oh, and I got into I played some of the Soul Calibur beta. Oh Lord. Mitsurugi is back.
Nice,
He's back. The game runs beautifully, looks great. They changed a lot of the.
I forgot you didn't go to E3, so you talking about old stuff. Yeah, we played that.
We saw that thing looks amazing,
bro. But I got my tail handed to me online, so I gotta get in there. I gotta get in the dojo.
Gotta get in the dojo.
Sharpen up them scales.
No doubt. So it looks like my co-host with the co-most came through the door. My brother from another mother, the difficult game conqueror, and the how of the young wolf. My man, Lord Addict, how you doing, sir?
Doing pretty good. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good. We got Hoeg in the building.
Yes,
morning.
Yes.
No doubt. What you been playing, man? What you been playing, Addict?
Pretty much just Destiny.
Whew.
Sounds like Addict needs a 2-hour energy or something.
Yeah, he needs a 5 hours,
man. You're gonna have to deal with it. This 11 o'clock stuff ain't for me, okay?
It's for the fishes.
It's in the bushes. Yo, I said that today. I said, "Oh my God!"
The 90s will be eliminated from contention, so my interest will be waiting soon. Waiting on your Jets. Now let me start, King.
Listen, my Jets is in the bushes. I already told you. Until they can actually put something together. That first game, and everybody's like, "Oh, it's on!" I said, "Shut up, shut up." I've seen this act before. I said, "Just wait till next week, where disappointment creeps right back in." And sure enough, right on cue, disappointment creep right back in. So I was like, and then the week after that, disappointment was gonna creep right back in. So.
In fairness to your Jets, I said this before the podcast started. My Lions have made a lot of NFL teams feel real good about themselves.
Yeah, but wait, time out. But didn't your Lions beat the Patriots?
Oh, they beat them bad. But I
thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. You understand?
Maybe Matt Patricia has some real deep-seated feelings about the Patriots, and he's going to lose to the rest of the division and just beat the Patriots to death. I don't know.
If he does that every week, I will tune in for that. That's the only thing I would tune in for.
Since King is ready, we got his intro on deck. And of course, we have the incredible Hulk of this, aka the Excess Gamer.
Ooh.
The Lord of Combat Sports, who is a man of his convictions, demands nothing less than that premium experience. It is the leader of the Fraud Alert movement.
Ooh.
Beloved Lord King, how you doing, sir?
Oh my God, LordCognito had to wake this dude up. I said to myself, all right, I got a good hour. Let me just lay down. Let me just get some sleep. And I
did that too, but it wasn't an hour. It was 30 minutes.
Bruh. I fell asleep watching the Kavanaugh stuff, and that's the most hilarious stuff television can give you.
If you want to be informed, watch Lord Hoeg's tweet timeline. If you really want to be informed.
No, you know what? I try to stay away from the whole political realm. I really actually do. I really try to stay away from it. But I've never seen an individual not answer a question in so many ways. I said, I'm sorry. I said, guilty or not guilty. I really don't care. But I said, that man has the art of the dodge. Like his dodge button, like he is constantly hitting the X button or the juke button in Madden because he's not getting tackled. He is not getting taken down. This is the funniest thing on television. Well, all right. Right now, I've been playing Destiny nonstop. And I've fell back on helping anyone. Lord Addict found out the other day because he hit me up. He was like, "Yo, King, you want to do this escalation protocol?" I said, "No, sir. That'll be a no." I said, "I do apologize because I need the shotgun." I said, "Yeah, I need to level. There's other people in this clan that is almost 600, if not 600. 599, 597, stuff like that." And here I am with my 3 characters sitting at 565. I am sorry.
God bless you on 3 characters. I don't even know how you're doing it.
That's fine, Lord King. I just went to LFG like I always do.
No, listen, and I like
I'm
I
starting
said,
to play with outside the clan more than I am playing with the clan.
Listen, like I said, with a heavy heart, I had to tell you, most of the time I tell you yes for everything. So I do apologize, and I'm calling fraud on myself. Like I will call fraud on a lot of things this week. And I'm glad you got the shotgun. I swear, I know.
I literally had it like the next run after you left.
Salute to you, Addict. I know you've been grinding for the escalation protocol shotgun out there.
Is there no raid completions yet?
ILP? ILP, yeah. We already had what? TAC did it. TAC did it.
Gotcha.
TAC had to leave the squad and go get it done. I mean, because listen, this raid is a whole lot different than the last raid. Now, this raid holds you accountable, but brother, it holds you accountable to such a level. They have the most crappiest minutia that's put inside of it that you have to do. This one picture room, everybody know the picture room, the Olga joint. That come on, man. I'm like, come on, Destiny, don't do this.
The scale is very.
It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. But it's worth it though. The drops is worth it. If we can get a good team in it to get it done. We had Chris pass a shout out to Lord Chris. Lord Chris did it. Lord Tack did it. And we're supposed to do it again this weekend and get it done with the team.
The funny thing is that picture room. We was in that with Lord Sinister. We was in the last picture room with like 50 seconds left. I was like, all right, let's take our time. Sid's like, jump on them. I'm like, no. And we ended up dying.
And you messed it up, right?
Yeah. Real quick, Lord Addict. Kevin in chat says that he needs Addict to return to Halo Wars. I never seen my dude on there anymore. So what's up with the Halo Wars?
That's not happening.
Halo Wars needs to fix Halo Wars. So
it's messed up right now.
No, it's not messed up. The meta is just in a bad place.
Got you. Okay. All right. So of course we got King out the way. Of course it's me, the gaming ninja himself, the Shinobi, LordCognito. Spreading that realness in the realm of the ILP. Not telling you what you want to hear, but what you need to hear. So similar to the Lords, just for me, I've been playing, Destiny 2, definitely taking up my life. I had to take a break, y'all. I actually spoke to Evantis about this. I've been suffering from sleep deprivation because of this game. And it's not good. It's not good. This is not good for my health. So I had to give me like a 2-day sabbatical, and I broke that protocol actually too. Because you know what I did, King? I had to go log into Spider so I get those masterwork cores for the cheat before he resets next day. So
they're fixing that. They're taking masterwork cores out of the game.
Yeah, they're gonna do because the economy is real tough for Infusion
Yeah,
to do that.
the way you're doing it is because I had
So what are
started
they
off with
doing?
they're taking the masterwork cores out. I had over
Launch Flashpoint.
1,500 masterwork cores, and I'm down to 3.
Yeah, it's bad. I mean, Cactus had a funny tweet where he had Nino Brown and put the gun to his friend's head, and it's like he said, when you had your best Destiny gun from year 1, but you out of masterwork cores.
I don't think they need to take masterwork cores out, but they
the way they're doing it, they have to take it out.
No, but what they're doing is they're replacing it. They're renaming it something else, and then they're also making the option to get them a little bit more easier.
I think if you made it to where, first off, you can make it to where Spider, is a little bit more flexible, not just 3-day.
Right.
Or you can make it to where, because there's 10 levels and you need it for everything above 3.
Right.
Just make it to like the last 3 you require master cores.
They're doing a lot, man. You got to watch the Flashpoint list when me and Ebon just broke it down. And they definitely did. They're saying that they understand the problem. That
what they need to do is they need to get rid of those resources, because I ain't about that life.
Well, you need to grind your resources. Hold on, let me say one thing before we start the show. I'm going to do a combat talk, and it's not going to be about any fights, because there was no fights this particularly good fights this weekend. It was crappy fights this weekend, but it's going to be on the death of HBO bots thing.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, it's a pretty sad thing, but it's very intricate in how we got from point A to point B, and it's not as clear as people may think it is, as they, just either got their butt whipped by this person and just was like, you know what, I'm done. No, it was a slow descent into exactly where they're at the bottom. So
it used to be the creme de la creme. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right, yeah, definitely look out for it. I miss those days. Larry Merchant, Jim Lampley, all that good stuff. So, and Roy with the green mic.
Y'all might not like where I take that combat talk because it's definitely gonna touch and it's gonna poke a lot of nerves. But I'm gonna have to tell it like it is, and some people may not want to hear it.
We look forward to it. But yeah, man, other than that, for me, I got to shout out, man, my guys from Weppy Studios and THQ Nordic. This is the Police Part 2 returns. I've been playing that. Oh, the debauchery.
I want to give that game a shout out. Like, I played a little bit of the first one, but I didn't really, because I had it for the Xbox and I had it for the Switch, and I didn't really dive into it. But I guess the XCOM thing got me in a little bit more.
Yeah.
But some of the dialogue in this game is, I'm just I was reading it to Kid Smooth. Literally, there's literally a time where someone is they're talking about all kinds of really dark stuff, and and you have an option to say, "Good, I don't got time for yourself either. Jump."
Yes, someone trying to commit suicide. The police calls that you respond to and the scenarios, LordCognito, that you have to deal with. This game is the most not suitable for work game. I am shocked it is on a Nintendo platform. To be honest, and I've said this with the first one. The second one is great. They got the voice actor from Duke Nukem. He's back, which was the main character, Jack Boyd. He's kind of more in a supplementary role this time. There's a female police chief. There is anti-feminist stuff going on in this game. This game touches all subjects. If you feel a way about certain subjects or groups, this game attacks it. There's no filter. And all type of corruption and debauchery. The game is hilarious. It's a little bit of XCOM as far as tactical when you go on the scene, but prior to that, it's really well written. You have a lot of dialogue in between, and it's people management. You have to manage your cops. You have to they get tired. Guys will make up excuses every day to not to come up to work. It is so much. It's funny. I'm back in my zone, so I'm warning the Lords now. During the week, late night, my tweets might be not suitable for because I will be screenshotting some of the stuff, and it's funny, man. Oh my god!
I actually convinced someone to buy it. They're like, "Is it worth $30?" I was like, "I'm only 2 hours into it. I could tell you this game's worth $30. I know for a fact it's got replay value."
No doubt. So let's get into it, man. We got a lot to talk about in this show. So now we got into what the Lords are playing. I want to start off with Lord Hoeg, his video game system history, his initial legal journey and eventual creation of Hoeg Law Business Law Firm, and of course, what led him to become the leader of the Help Us Out Hoeg and Tweets Not Legal Advice movement. So, Lord John, let's start. Actually, Lord Rick, start from the beginning. What were some of the first video game systems you had, and what got you into gaming?
Oh man. Well, I like so many people, my father was a big techie back in the 70s. And so the first thing that I can remember is really old. I mean, we had an Intellivision, we had an Atari 2600, and that really graduated into an Atari ST, a Commodore 64, into NES at the end of the 80s, and then kind of on the PC side with Ataris, ultimately with a lot of Macintoshes at the time. So we had an old Mac that overheated at the top, so we had a paper chimney that you actually put on top of the Macintosh to keep its heat down. And I remember a lot of good games on those. I used to play the adventure type games.
Okay, nice, man.
And that love really came from my father, in all honesty. And as that period went on, obviously Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, but even the more expensive niche stuff we got a chance to play. So we had a TurboGrafx CD, we had a CDI, we had a 3DO.
Yes.
And that love just permeated my life, honestly. I really was a defender of video games, even in the nerd classes in middle school and high school, on debate and on quiz bowl, and telling people that, this is how I learned a lot of vocabulary, was from Final Fantasy VI, and I learned to type King's Quest.
King's Quest, remember?
And I started thinking about economics and developing my political and economic philosophies from playing Civilization and Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri. Playing games like Aerobiz on the Super Nintendo and those kinds of things. And I've maintained that love throughout. So I went to Michigan Law School from 2002 to 2005. In 2005, I get out of law school, and I'm hired by a big law firm in Ann Arbor, so right there near the law school.
Home base.
And I start out doing venture capital and mergers and acquisitions. And I don't want to bore your listeners. We can talk about the details on any of that as much as you want or as little as you want.
Sure.
But I did that for a long period of time. And then 2008 rolls around. And as you might remember, a lot of stuff slowed down, including venture capital in Michigan. And like a lot of employers, they say, all right, that's good. But what are you doing to make sure that you keep your plate full? What are you doing to make sure we're keeping the revenues up?
Right.
And so I said, well, I have a deep love for games and technology, and Ann Arbor is a big hot spot for development of new inventions, ideas, biopharmaceuticals, life sciences. And I said, let's start to do more software stuff. And we had a kind of small burgeoning software field at Honigman, Miller, Schwartz and Cohn, which is the big law firm where I worked.
That's your home base first. That's where you started.
Yep, that was where it started. And I worked on software. And at that point in time, software as a service was very novel in terms of what legal documentation was behind it. It still is, frankly. And so I put it upon myself to go learn how to do those documents, how to negotiate those licenses and intellectual property. And as we went on from there, a lot of the big clients at that law firm had custom software development needs. So I had those connections. I made those connections. And ultimately, venture capital came back, mergers and acquisitions came back. And on top of that, I had this burgeoning software practice.
Nice.
So from there, I decided I wanted to be an equity partner, senior partner, the highest level at the law firm. And so I made that my goal. And in 2014,
going up the ladder, let's go
up the ladder. 2014, I made that happen. Got voted up as an equity partner. Nice. Ironically, on the same day that Harbaugh was flying in to give his press conference to the University of Michigan. These things, stick in your memory.
Harbaugh, shout out.
And then as soon as I got that, I said, hey, what's next? And I looked at it and I said, I want to run my own place. Nice. So I talked to some partners and I talked about what that might look like. And in April of 2016, so not that long ago, but long enough that I'm happy to say I can still feed the family. We created the new law firm. Nice. And so 2016 was making sure that we could do it. 2017 was really kind of moving forward with what it looks like to market this thing. And so that was when I initially connected with folks like the Easy Allies. It's when I started my Twitter, really on the notion that a lot of people could use good legal advice, and a lot of people are kind of standoffish about what a lawyer is, especially transactional lawyer. You know, one of the things I say on my tweets, one of the things I say in my emails, one of the things I say on my phone calls is, I'm not a law and order guy. I'm not the guy that goes and stands in front of the court and says objection overruled. And so what do I do? And communicating with people, and you know, I've come up with ways to say, hey, look, you know, if you're signing your name to something, that's when you should really think about maybe getting somebody to read that something for you. And whether that's a lease, whether that's a custom contract, whether that's a consulting agreement or a services arrangement, you know, maybe we can make that work. I know that lawyers are a cost center, but the thing I tell my clients is, in general, I've helped people to start out with, and I've fixed a lot of problems. And fixing the problems costs 5 times as much. And so if you can have that call with me to start out with, if we can get you to a place where we say, hey, that provision is terrible, let's cross that out. Regardless of whether they say it's non-negotiable, everything's negotiable, we can have that conversation. And I feel like I can get that value added to folks that are starting up, maybe haven't done this before, and folks that maybe just don't know what they're signing up for. You know, the story I like to give to folks is, I had a client that signed a waste management contract, just folks that come and pick up the trash. And they needed to move locations. They were growing, they were expanding. They were a big, successful company. They were moving to a different spot. And this waste management contract said, that's fine. You can get out of this contract because we don't service that new location, but it'll cost $19,000.
Gotcha.
And they call me up and they say, you know, it's $50 a month. What's the deal here? And I take a look at the contract. This is after the fact. I didn't look at it beforehand. And I say, well, they've got a provision here that says you owe them triple for every month on what would have remained under the contract, and you signed a 15-year waste management contract. and they say, oh my goodness, can we get out of that? And so, you know, we can negotiate and say, but once you owe them that money, you're not in a position of leverage.
Exactly.
And so I feel like I can give value to folks that want to do good things, want to have good ideas, want to be out there and making our lives, all of our lives, better by whatever idea they want to bring to fruition. And I can do it in a way that's, I hesitate to exactly use the word fun, but approachable. That lawyers can be people, and they can make jokes about Urban Meyer's history of lying,
which I've seen on your timeline very often.
At the same time, give good kind of conversational points about what the law is, what they should be looking out for, and then live tweet 9 hours of the Kavanaugh hearings. You know, I'm a full service law firm.
Let me back you up a little bit, because you dropped so many gems. Oh my God, it's so much you dropped. That the thing I want to get, let's go back to the gaming for a second.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just for a second. And I just want to say, like, okay, first of all, shout out to the dads out there, because your history kind of similar to mine. My dad was kind of the one that was a techie that kind of introduced me to gaming. So you did say Atari 2600.
I did.
You did say Telltale. You dropped some bomb names, and you even said the niche stuff, which is like TurboGrafx 16 CD, which King, I know, very pleased.
Yes, 3DO, yes.
Now, my dad got me into Coleco. Now, was Coleco missed? I want to add, oh my God, addict to the young boy. But anyway, we're talking before his time. But like, I noticed you mentioned that, you know, I didn't hear Coleco, and I wanted to ask you about NES, the original NES.
Yeah.
Did those have any gaps in there, or did you experience those as well?
No, I had an NES. I that was my first introduction to Final Fantasy, which would be a lifelong.
Nice.
And I still vividly remember, speaking of my father, one of the few times we really needed help on a game, and you know, GameFAQs, the internet didn't exist back then.
Right.
So
GameFAQs, yes.
Sorry, he said GameFAQs, yes.
Dragon Warrior, the original Dragon Warrior, which was Dragon Quest in Japan, of course, had a quest about 2/3 of the way through where you had to find something called the Sunstone. And the trick to finding this thing was that the towns in Dragon Warrior would immediately pop you out to the world map when you left, except that one town didn't do that. And so you had to notice that if you could go 2 squares past the entrance point and walk around the outside wall, and there was the Sunstone. My dad and I could not figure this out to save our lives. And this was the one and only time that I remember that we called the Nintendo helpline.
So,
And actually said, we need the
That was
Sunstone.
like $10 an hour.
Yeah,
That
it was like some huge amount of money.
$10 a minute, something crazy.
And it was very funny because you could tell when it's one of those areas where clearly people were getting hung up because the guy basically said Sunstone and then read us the paragraph. So, but I remember that vividly. Obviously, that's a great memory for me, working through these issues with my father. Yeah, and the original NES, the Hoeg family had a game, Princess Tomato and the Vegetable Kingdom, I think, that we would play, and we weren't allowed to play on our own, that we would play after dinner as a family.
Wow, that's cool.
Of course, because I'm obviously a rebel and a renegade, I played a little forward in Princess Tomato one day. And I got punished. I got grounded, I think.
Going ahead of the family.
He said, "Who the hell touched the tomato?"
They did. They said that's a breach of the family trust, and we can't touch Princess Tomato. So you're learning life lessons from your video games as well.
Life lessons, man. I love it. Now you said the niche stuff. You mentioned also 3DO. What's your experience? Yeah. We have a lot of 3DO fans. Shout out to Lord Bill Stillwell. Shout out to Lord from Microsoft's backward compatibility team, as well as Lord John Linneman, and we have a bunch of 3DO fans. So tell us about your experience about the Panasonic interactive real player. Remember that?
Well, I love the 3DO. So as you said in my introduction, one of the things I'm really excited about right now is Star Control Origins.
Yes.
And my favorite game of all time is a game called Star Control 2. And the place where I was introduced to that game was on the 3DO. And I played that game at this point in time, playing it now in emulated form on the PC. I've probably played that game 24 times.
Yes.
And that is absolutely fantastic. The 3DO, like the TurboGrafx CD, like the CDI, at that point in time in the 90s, were some of the only places where you could really get really good, at the time, full motion video, sound, orchestration.
Yes.
And it just blew us away. I mean, I remember sitting there again with my father and my brother playing East Book 1 and 2 on the TurboGrafx and having these anime cutscenes start out the game with this rock music.
Woo, the music was incredible. But I just heard you say Philips CDI. Did you play that crappy Zelda? Did you play it?
I did. I owned that Zelda. My parents owned that Zelda. I played that Zelda. CDI, we got that primarily for, I think at launch of that system, there was a golf game. And this golf game had essentially treatment of the golfing like it was on TV. They had the announcers for really the first kind of very significant announcing. They had full motion video golfers kind of putting and then say, "Ooh, just missed that one."
Yeah.
My dad absolutely adored that. Yeah, that was the biggest deal. They had little chyrons that came up that showed it exactly like on TV. And we were just in love with that. So I don't have as many memories of the CDI as I do the 3DO. 3DO, I was playing Road Rash. There was a video game on the 3DO I really loved that had kind of
Way the Warrior
half times.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, Star Control on the 3DO. There was a game show game called Twisted that I played.
That was so good. Twisted was so
there you go.
good.
Yeah. What about me and you've talked about this on Twitter? What about Alone in the Dark? Did you have the 3DO version?
My recollection is I played Alone in the Dark on the PC.
Okay.
But I loved Alone in the Dark. That's obviously the predecessor, really, to what Resident Evil took over for a period of time.
Talk over.
But Alone in the Dark was a good time. That's one of those where it's this is a good idea, maybe not fully realized. Resident Evil comes in and says, "Let's throw some money at it," and Resident Evil is the classic.
Absolutely.
And so I think it's always interesting to pull those threads apart and take a look at where the ideas came from, because video gaming is still so terribly young compared to most industries that we would otherwise talk about or look at. And so you can still see, here's how we solved for first-person shooters and consoles, and here's the great idea that Halo had, and here's the great idea that Call of Duty strapped onto it, and here's what Alone in the Dark did, and here's what Resident Evil did, and here's how we got from X to Y. And I think that's so cool. And I still have a great deal of fun looking at those things. I do think that as we've kind of promoted high textures and big expensive things, we've lost some of that nuance and kind of interesting game design at kind of the higher levels, the double A's maybe, if not the triple A's. But I like playing the indie games and some of the other kind of independent developers takes on these things, because I love them, but I don't want everything to be a first-person shooter or a third-person.
Agreed. Right. Completely agree. And shout out to the chat, man. Sam told me, he said, shout out to THQ Nordic for purchasing the Alone in the Dark IP. A lot of Alone in the Dark fans, a lot of people loving these memories you're talking about, Lord Hoeg. Now, I want to ask you, I know you glanced over it, as far as a lot of our chat and our lords, they know you from Easy Allies. They help us out Hoeg series. So I know you did briefly touch on it, but like, how did that link up really come to be? And then also I want to shout out the Lord Brandon Jones, Kyle Boltzmann, and those guys. They do a fantastic job. So how did that happen where you now are added into like a gaming podcast to be asked legal advice about, how things work? How did that whole thing really come to be?
Well, as you know, Easy Allies is Patreon supported, and they had a podcast sponsorship open up in February of 2017, when I was looking at, I've got this budget of marketing and how do I want to spend it? And one of the things that I really liked about them in particular, and I told this to them, is their focus on being positive, not to the exclusion of everything else, but really on a focus on what can we take as a silver lining? What can we take about positivity here? Primarily because a lot of the games media, in my experience, reading them, watching them, has kind of developed a certain level of cynical, ironic snark. And that's fine. But I tend to be a more earnest guy. You can tell from these discussions of my past. I love this stuff at a kind of very fundamental level. And the Easy Allies really spoke to me in the way that they were talking about things.
Nice.
And then a friend of mine forwarded to me The Trial of Kyle Bosman, where instead of just being a comedy skit, they actually had, I don't know if you remember this video or saw this, but they had Bloodworth, they had some other folks come out and actually talk about things like good faith and fair dealing in contract terms, and whether there was proper contract negotiation and language in there. And these were my people. They were nebbish and technical in a way that I really enjoyed. Nice. And so I said, all right, let's put some money down and see what gets us.
That's what's up.
And I've gotten clients from that sponsorship. I've obviously gotten to know some of the guys. And I think sometime in July of last year, there was some stuff happening. There were some studio closures. There was a Visceral. There was EA dealing with some things. And I had tweeted out, and I tweeted to Kyle and I think to Brandon. I said, well, some of this is being motivated by corporate structuring, that we're looking at games as a service making so much more money than single player, and EA always jumps on this life raft. And some of this is about fiduciary duties, which is now a catchphrase over at Easy Allies. But do you want to talk about that at all? And Kyle said, yeah, let's talk about fan games. Let's talk about fiduciary duties. Let's do that. And eventually, when I was when they asked me questions and I was submitting stuff for the 5th time, the 6th time, the 7th time, that just became a thing that people liked. And then Kyle emailed me and said, they were getting a lot of positive feedback about those segments, and did I want to do more? And there might be some stuff in the offing. The Allies are very busy guys, so they're always coming up with new stuff. But there should be potentially something on the horizon for that.
Okay, all right. So not only was Help Us Out Hoeg born, we got more stuff cooking.
I think that's fair to say. Who knows? That could be 3 years down the pipe, but yes, it is fair to say we've got stuff cooking.
Nice. Salute to Easy Allies and those guys. Fantastic job. So yeah, man, another catch phrase for you guys, for your firm in particular, obviously is the big firm lawyer with small firm approach. Yeah. So for us layman legal lords, right? What's the difference between like the big firm versus small firm mentality? And then I want you to also, if you can tie in what aspects you have any impact on, what aspects of the legal side of the gaming industry that maybe gamers don't truly understand. So 2-part question.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think that the big firm lawyer comes from my background. When as part of marketing, as part of telling people, hey, yes, I'm a guy that uses virtual services and uses virtual networking and can take my laptop around, and so I don't necessarily have the hardwood floors and the fancy office and the 100-person secretarial staff, but that you're not going to get a lesser service for that. I was trained there. I went to a top 10 law school. I graduated at the top 1% of my class.
That's right. Talk about it.
Worked there for 13 years. I learned mergers and acquisitions, venture capital. I have all the pieces that you need. That being said, if you're concerned about being treated as a number or being treated in a way that, hey, if I can only pay you $10,000 instead of $100,000, you're going to treat me less than, that's not going to happen here.
Respect.
I'm focused like Jerry Maguire in the first act on fewer clients, less money, personal service. Let's get you to a place where you're getting the legal service you need and not breaking the bank and not scuttling the ship while you're trying to launch it.
Nice.
And that's really what I mean by big firm lawyer, small firm approach is I'm going to know your name. We're going to have in-depth talks. I meet with clients for coffee, not build. We just talk for an hour, have those conversations and get them to a place where they feel comfortable in the business side of things with the legal contracts where they wouldn't otherwise feel comfortable. Because I'm talking to geniuses, I'm talking to neuroscientists and rocket scientists and people developing cures for cancer and things like that. But they don't know how a capitalization table works or what your shareholding should look like or what a pre-money valuation is compared to a Series A liquidation preference. And I can give that to them and we can try not to break the bank while we do that.
That's what's up. Very honorable, Lord Hoeg. Respected.
Now, what was the second part? That was big firm. The second part was gaming.
Yeah, the second one was gaming. And what
you get a little bit of that to help us out, Hoeg. And I think in your introduction you kind of hinted at it, which is I have people on Twitter or people on Google calling me a corporatist or capitalist scum.
Yes.
Or
wow. You get a lot of hate sometimes, Hoeg. I see those tweets.
I know. I mean, you could, yeah. So what I try to do is I try to go out there and say, all right, so this thing is happening. Telltale's closing, Visceral's closing, X, Y, and Z is happening with contracts. Here's what it means when THQ Nordic buys Amalur out of a bankruptcy estate. To try to give people a little bit more factual understanding of the structure behind the gaming industry or any other industry you want to talk about, so that, yeah, you can be mad about things that are deserving of being mad about, but maybe not as mad about things that are kind of natural in the way these things probably have to play out structurally. So I'm not trying to take away anybody saying Telltale treated those people wrongly, for instance.
We're going to get into that.
I am trying to explain what it means to be insolvent, what it means to not have enough money to pay the creditors who you do have a contractual relationship with, and what kind of box the Telltale management was in under the rules of law. And you can say, Rick, those laws are stupid. And I can say, okay, we can have that conversation. Absolutely. But let's have that conversation and not jump immediately to these are evil capitalist swine that we need to put Palpatine pictures on.
You hear that, addict? See, addicts on that side.
Well, I don't mind it. I like having these conversations. I like, my wife gets upset at Twitter because she doesn't like people being mean to me. Right. And I look at that and I say, I love being challenged.
Oh, hold on. I'm sorry, Lord Hoeg. What did you just say,
I'll let you guys sort this out.
Let us sort this out. I got to throw Attic under the bus because he's the youngest Lord on the panel, and I love him. And the thing about it, he represents, like, I don't say he always votes on the side of the consumer and doesn't understand the corporation side at all. I'm not saying that, but there's sometimes he definitely immediately assumes that it's some evil thing going on in the background.
There's a little bit of
need you to pull up receipts and tell me occasion I did this.
I shall not pull up any receipts right now.
Well, hey, like I said, he wouldn't be the first person to call me an evil corporatist swine. So
I love Lord. No, I had to just tease Attic a little bit.
No, absolutely. No, and but that's really when we talk about help us out, Hoeg on Easy Allies. When we talk about my Twitter feed at Hoeg Law, by the way, it's one of those things where I have this background, I have this education and this experience, and I just want to talk about that. I'm not trying to put judgments on how anybody feels about anything, other than to say, hey, if you feel this way for this reason, and that reason maybe isn't true or doesn't exist, let's talk about that, because I think there's a misunderstanding.
Being that you brought this up, wanted to get into a little. Now, I wouldn't even call this controversy. I consider.
Is this where we talk about the Kavanaugh hearings for 2 hours?
No, this is not where we talk about the Kavanaugh hearings. But I want to shout out a good friend to the roundtable. He's been on the show. MPD's own Lord Matt Piscatella.
Yeah.
And what I don't know
into it a little bit.
Yes. It's I'm glad you mentioned that. So pretty much, I remember this was a while back, and you guys have had some interesting Twitter banter, I feel, back and forth over the years. So one of the conversations I want to focus on, particularly that caught my attention, was like the whole terminology of game developer. Do you remember this conversation, Lord Hoeg?
Yes.
If not, I could refresh. So basically, what I recall was there was a gentleman, I'm not going to name his name, he was on Twitter, and pretty much he made a statement that said like people that are game devs. So he's like designer, artist, programmer, HR, community managers, etc. He had a long list, and I believe you chimed in, and then you basically
want to do.
Basically, you was like, look, everyone that puts work into something, and I quote, you said they deserve credit. Absolutely. He said, that said, words must convey meaning to be useful, and no one intends to refer to HR, business development, marketing, or cafeteria staff when using the term developer. Then I believe Matt Piscatella jumped in and he said, look, an independent game developer must write, program, QA, market, etc., and yet they still call themselves devs. And then I felt you had the funniest comeback of the night. You said, sure, anyone that directly develops a game rather than infrastructure is a developer, regardless of whether they also sweep the floors. But if your only role is sweeping the floors, yes, you help facilitate the game's creation, but you didn't in any real way develop it. So obviously you guys continue to go back and forth, and then you kind of came to a resolution. But I just wanted to ask you about.
Wait, was this really an argument?
Oh yes, they was at it. They was my Twitter feed was lit. I was eating food. I was just tuning in because these are my guys. I like Hoeg, I like Piscatella, and I've seen a couple of times. So I just wanted you to clarify that your whole position on developer, not to really bring beef, but just the whole developer thing.
Well, the one thing I never quite got on this was, it was Rami from Vlambeer comes out and says this, that all these people are game developers. I still feel like something precipitated that. I wasn't party to that conversation.
Right.
So I do still feel like I stepped into some kind of discussion, probably about unionization or something along those lines.
You are correct. It was Rami.
But my position is, you can't just say an independent game developer does all these things and you can't take that away because they do these other things. That's absolutely true. My brother and I, did iPhone apps for a couple years that I'm very proud of. And that's everything. You do everything involved with that process. But part of that is you did the writing and the programming and the developing of the game, as well as figuring out how to keep the lights on and dusting the place. My point was that if we're going to talk about who a game developer is, we just need to be careful that we're not including people that are useful to any corporate structure, but not in particular the development of the game. And somebody I think came on later and said, well, we usually refer to it as companies, and that's true. That's fine. When you say X company is a developer, I have no problem with that. But if you say somebody, the really the closest gray area for me personally is when you talk about HR at a major software house. They're mostly hiring and firing and coordinating disputes. Did that person develop product X? And I would say no, for the most part. And I think that might be where we have a disagreement. But I don't mind Matt at all. Matt comes hard and he likes to be very strident in what he says. And I got no problem with that because I like to do that too.
Yeah. No, I thought it was cool. And like I said, one thing about you guys, and Matt doubled down on his thing. He just wanted to, I wanted to protect back in the sense that, he just was talking about as far as gatekeeping the term. And one thing that I like that you guys do, even though you may bump head, you guys do come to kind of like a reasonable understanding so that, even if you still on that side of the fence, it's respectable. And I do like that about you too. You guys can have respectable disagreements. So I just thought that was, I remember it like the back of my hand. And I was just like, wow, this is funny. This is hilarious. They're going in, You
started that, and I thought for sure you were going to pull up some of my Polygon or Kotaku.
Oh, no, I wouldn't do that to you. I would only do that.
That's stepping in it. That's some fun stuff on Twitter.
Oh yeah, I know about those too.
Oh my goodness.
All right. So another thing that you actually specialize in at Hoeg Law is obviously with your firm is mergers and acquisitions, right?
Yeah, I do a lot of them.
Right. So with the recent studio acquisitions by Microsoft, they acquired Undead Labs,
Yeah.
Ninja Theory, and now the rumors of another Microsoft acquisition being revealed at this newly announced, possibly being revealed at this newly announced XO18 fan event.
Okay.
I wanted your input on the process of how like gaming acquisitions get done, or just the input on the length of time to complete. Because we see Microsoft just, I call it the Infinity Gauntlet moment. They're just snatching up all the gems, and like, how is this done? Like, how far is the time? Just give us some input on how that whole process is.
Sure. Well, part of that's going to depend on whether the company is shopping itself or whether it just gets a call out of the blue. So a lot of my clients essentially decide, they look at their numbers, they look at what it takes to grow. They look at where their current lives are and say, hey, I think we'd like to figure out what this thing might get us if we sold it right now.
Right.
And we say, okay, let's look at what a term sheet would look like. And a term sheet is a shorter document between 1 and 10 pages that says, here's what this sale will look like. And let's talk to people about whether that's attractive and what that number should be, that top line X million dollars, and see if there's anybody that's biting. I just finished the sale of a company this last week that was the process. To give you some kind of context of what the timing for that was, we went out with term sheets in about May, and like I said, we closed last week.
Wow.
Okay.
So this is a process. You're talking about June, July, August. Wow, you're talking like at least like 8 to 9 months. This takes time.
Well,
that's why Microsoft couldn't say the other studios. They talked about only the studios that the ink was dry on, and it was other studios that they're in acquisitions and conversations about that they can't talk about. So.
No, they shouldn't. And that ink dry is interesting. So there's two ways to essentially close these deals. You can close them as a sign and close, meaning when that ink dries, when you sign that document, the company is yours. Or you can sign them as a sign and then close, which is you look at like the Disney Fox acquisition. Fox is not owned by Disney right this second, but they've announced it. They've signed the deal. It's been approved by the shareholders. It's done. Except for when you sign and then close, there's a list of things that have to happen. The government has to approve X. Our third-party contractors have to approve the assignment of the contracts if that's what's happening in the deal. We need to get approval from X board, Y board, and Z board. And so you have this process where you've got Fox and Disney signed up to something. And my bet would be that they will close that deal sometime in the first or second quarter next year. Because you just have to.
I had a question for you with that. Since you brought up that exactly, that
I want to get into that too.
Okay, I just saw that Disney and Fox agreed to sell Comcast Sky Network.
The Sky, yeah.
Right. So and the whole big structure, Disney actually was going after Fox because of the assets that they had in Sky Network, and they wanted to use the entertainment, right.
Yeah, I would characterize the Fox assets as entertainment and news.
Right.
And Disney wasn't as interested in the news side. They would have been fine. Disney's a megalith and would buy everything they could if they if they were able to. But that wasn't what was driving the value proposition for them. They're still basically funding the content creation for Disney streaming. So what happened is they went in, I believe Comcast and Fox still being its own shell, bid on the remainder of Sky. That was an auction that happened either this last week or 2 weeks ago. And Fox lost, as they were always going to, because Comcast had this big pile of money that they didn't spend buying Fox.
Yeah, the 40 million.
Bought the remainder of Sky.
40 billion.
Yeah. Comcast bought the remainder of Sky, and then they probably did that with phone calls and an understanding that because neither Disney nor Comcast wants half of Sky or whatever those percentages were, that Disney would have Fox sell the remainder to Comcast and they'd essentially bifurcate completely. So, but you see in that kind of relationship that Disney is still essentially making those decisions, running Fox, and Fox is saying, okay, since we're going to be part of the Disney family, we can give up this Sky piece to Comcast and Comcast can have this whole asset so that they're happy.
Now, this is my question, right? Yeah. Now, seeing that happen, who does the 40 billion go to? Because if, like you said, they're waiting for the the X's and O's to be checked off on the boxes, for the Fox thing to go through, like, the government and everything saying that's okay. the question is, who does the 40 billion go to with the acquisitions of Sky? Because it's actually being purchased from Fox, right? But Disney actually owns Fox now, so that was my question.
They don't own Fox now. They have a signed deal to own Fox.
Right.
So what'll happen is Fox will take this asset and they will exchange it for a sack of money that is $40 billion, and then they will, and then the shareholders will have that asset, and then it depends on what the what the stock purchase agreement between Fox and Disney says. So there could be an adjustment for excess of cash that would otherwise be sitting in the company, or there could be some kind of dispersal mechanism that would have that money go out to the existing Fox shareholders before they sell. Probably not that, because the Disney Fox sales price is already set.
Right.
So they're going to buy Fox at this set sales price, and that included a Sky asset that has been essentially converted into a sack of money. So chances are they can't distribute that, but I don't want to say for sure because that would be part of the agreement.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha. Right. Actually, I want to get into the chat because Lord Sam Tolbert had a fantastic question. He said, Lord Hoeg, he said, at what point does a video game studio acquisition is a letter of intent filed, and can you break that process down?
Sure. So a letter of intent for not just a video game company, but anybody else is largely a non-binding document. What a letter of intent says is, here is how the definitive agreements will look. And the reason we do this process is so that we can agree on the major issues that if we didn't have agreement on, we shouldn't pay the lawyers $50,000 to draft these documents. So a letter of intent will say the top line price is $50 million. Here are the employees that we're going to hire after the acquisition takes place. Here is the bonus plan that they're going to have. Here are the promises that you have to make about the company when we buy it. And here's how the documentation is going to look. That's a very short way of describing it. But that's what happens. And then what's a binding part of the letter of intent is generally exclusivity and confidentiality. So you have a letter of intent. Here's our top line stuff. Once you sign this, the lawyers can get going. It's non-binding. We haven't sold you the company yet until we have these definitive documents. But what is binding is you won't tell anybody about what these terms are, and you won't try to sell the company out from under us to someone else during a 60-day period from after when we signed this.
Gotcha.
So that letter of intent doesn't get filed. It doesn't go to a state agency. It doesn't do any of those things. But it is a contract that binds you to be quiet about it and to not talk to other people. So when you see sometimes things get leaked out where somebody has cut off discussions, they were discussing with a bunch of people and they've cut off 3 of them. Sometimes the business journalist says, we think they signed a letter of intent with X. And that can happen. So that's really the letter of intent process. It's the first step to say, we are agreed in principle to selling you the company for X amount of dollars. And now we can pay the lawyers. They're obviously exorbitant fees to document this thing. And we don't feel too bad about it. That's really what a term sheet is.
So it's pretty much like opening negotiations, and you're going to be talking to me if you sign this, no one else.
Right. So yeah. So the letter of intent is really those bullet points of, if all of this works out, we assume the lawyers can sort out the rest. If these 6 bullet points are true, then we're willing to sell you the company, and so we will sign on the dotted line for starting this process.
Sounds good. You got my mind going now because I'm hearing all this exclusivity and letter of intent.
Sure.
And
lawyers.
You knew exactly lawyer talk. Now LordCognito is a huge Destiny fan. And one question that always been in the back of my mind was the relationship between Sony and Activision / Bungie on exclusivity. Now we do know that they have the rights to the maps, and usually it's an exclusive map, exclusive exotic. That's generally how the format goes whenever a new Destiny expansion comes out or a new title comes out. Now there was one specific time where protocol, I would say, was kind of broken, because prior to that point, prior to the Taken King, right? Usually a full calendar year would go past, and then the Xbox would be allowed to have those exclusive items as far as DLC is concerned, right? Or as far as exotics or whatever the maps were that were exclusive to PlayStation.
Right.
And one time when the Taken King launched, the actual exotics didn't come and the exclusive maps didn't come to Xbox. And when Bungie was questioned by it, they kind of dodged it, but they kind of just said, it's really still up to, Activision or Sony or whatever. They kind of dodged it. So my question to you is, would these kind of agreements, these exclusive agreements in video games, I've never seen a situation like Destiny's where the length of time is the length of time, which is a year. Usually content maps are like a couple of months, maybe, but I've never seen this before. And then how is it possible that they were able to change the nature of that agreement when previously it was a year? Is that a fluid situation that can always be edited?
So this is all speculation. Tweet's not legal advice.
Let's go. Hashtag.
But in all likelihood, it's a continuing marketing arrangement. Mm-hmm. So Destiny, really Activision, gets a marketing combination with Sony. So you see those. Sony probably pays for some of those ad spots with the Sony PlayStation bullet thing on at the end. Destiny gets put in those Sony Marketplace old guy commercials, and they get to have a place at the E3 press conference. They get talked about, that kind of thing. And as part and parcel to that, as a quid pro quo, Activision has to give something back. So Activision can pay cash money. Activision can make content. Activision can make that content exclusive for a period of time. And chances are the way this works is each new piece of content has an addendum or another agreement where they say, this is what this exclusivity will look like. This is what this arrangement will look like. So for I'm forgetting the tiny 2 DLCs at the beginning of Destiny, but Pre-Taken King.
Yeah, Pre-Taken King, Dark Below, and House of Wolves.
So for those, they might have said, okay, the PlayStation will have a gun. The gun will be for 3 months, and then it'll be on Xbox or whatever that time frame was. And then when Taken King comes out, it'll be forever. It'll be for a year, whatever it is. That it comes out for every piece of content, and it's really just a matter of. What I tell people is, especially commercially, you can contract for whatever you want. So if Activision wants to say, we'll make this and it'll never be on any other system elsewise, basically the way that negotiation works is you got to make it worth our while, Sony. And then Sony says, all right, how about 2 E3s and $6 million worth of commercials and treatment in a package with a PlayStation 4 and prominent position on our PlayStation Store for 6 months. And you just, you think about when you're playing Madden and you're putting the sliders and trying to get the trade negotiations just right. That's what a contract negotiation is. Is that enough? No, I want this too. Is that enough? No, I want this too. And it can be anything. And sometimes that's going to be 3 months. Sometimes that's going to be a year. Sometimes that's going to be forever.
I never even considered.
You saw that with Rise of the Tomb Raider, where when something is already multi-plat and then it's not suddenly, it looks like stealing rather than creation. So, those companies have gotten better at, even if it is stealing, making it look like creation. So Sony's gotten better at being like, well, we're not sure this content would have existed without this marketing plan. And you say, yeah, maybe not.
Interesting. So again, just to be clear, this is in the Destiny situation. The relationship is between Activision and Sony. Is there any liability to Bungie? Because a lot of people attack Bungie directly and say, you guys are holding content. Are they not responsible, so to speak? Is it between those two entities?
I suspect not. I mean, we could look at the lawsuits from way back when, but in general, a publisher that has that kind of exclusive right to publish has an exclusive right to market. What you're doing is you're getting this set amount of money to hit milestones, to develop, to pay your people. That's Activision to Bungie. And in exchange, Bungie's giving to Activision certain rights, both in royalties and in revenue, and also rights to market the thing as it so chooses. That's why, again, using the Rise of the Tomb Raider example, when that happened, you had essentially Crystal Dynamics say, hey, man, we don't know what Square Enix is doing. Stop texting us.
Fair enough. Wow. Thank you for the clarity. I've always wanted to know that. I always,
go
ahead, Addict.
Ever since I didn't even really I I never really thought about how they can use E3 as a leverage. I mean, obviously that's a set stage. They have a lot of people. I never thought, and that could be a huge key that these platform holders can use, because there's a lot of people that watch E3, and that's worth a lot of money. I mean, look what happened with what was the game that Sony did the Kickstarter thing on? Shenmue.
Oh,
yeah,
Shenmue.
Like, just because that was shown on the stage, it was funded before E3 was even over.
Yeah, no, it's valuable. The really interesting thing about those kind of relationships is oftentimes when you're talking about contracts, you've got value running one way, and you see the other side kind of pay for it with money or exclusivity. With the video game industries, one of the really awesome and fascinating things about it from a contract law perspective is, yes, at the same time that it's useful for Destiny to be on Sony's stage, it's useful for Sony to have Destiny on its stage.
Right.
So it's really this kind of interesting, yes, you probably do owe us some money. We should figure out how to do this exclusivity, but it's not like we're not getting a benefit from having you exclusively on our stage. So it's really an interesting kind of back and forth there.
A good example of that would be like CD Projekt Red with Cyberpunk. Like, sure, we want to, show our game, but let's be real, we don't need you, Microsoft. We're getting something out of this in return.
Right, and what they got was an absolutely awesome finale to that E3 show with the hat.
Yes.
That was pretty cool.
That was amazing. That was amazing. Yeah, it's so interesting to see how this stuff works, man. I think this is awesome. Thank you for answering this question.
Sure.
I'm going to finish up the Q&A with the Lords. If the Lords want to jump in, Lord Saab, I know maybe you had a couple questions.
Yeah, I mean, I know we talked about this last week, but I would definitely like to talk about a little more in depth on the Telltale stuff.
Yeah.
I know you've had some discourse on Twitter over this, which people feel like, obviously that the former employees need to be taken care of above and beyond everything else. And then you took it from the law side of how they, explaining solvency and the fact that they need to take care of people that are contractually obligated to take care of before they even consider anything like that. But my question to you is, as somebody who has an interest on both ends of this, as a gamer who obviously plays these games and wants these companies to be successful, what do you think is a middle ground for this sort of stuff? Like, what has to happen in the gaming industry so that these developers are taken care of and the business side is also taken care of, and everyone is able to move forward and sort of benefit from this? Is unionization an answer? Because I know a lot of corners of the internet are talking about that sort of stuff. Like, this needs to happen so that closures like this don't happen. How people are taken care of. People, if there are closures, people have severance, things like that. So, as somebody who's sort of vested on both sides, what do you think is a possible solution to this sort of stuff?
Well, I think the starting point for that would be to say Telltale was absolutely mismanaged.
Right.
I do a lot of talking on Twitter, and I do a lot of talking in law with tweets not legal advice and couching it in saying maybe they weren't, or maybe this, or perhaps that. Telltale was mismanaged. They took what would have been a business model and they spent too much money and realized not enough revenues, and they went down. Even talking about what happened in the last couple of weeks, it was clear that they needed an external financial influx in order to keep the boat floating. And when that failed, they went under. So starting there, they were mismanaged. In terms of unionization, and I tweeted a little bit about this with Jason at Kotaku and some other people. This is when we get corporate swine and et cetera, et cetera. I think unions are absolutely fine if people want to join them. I think we should be clear to what they do and what they don't do. And what they wouldn't solve is a failed business model. Telltale not making enough money on what it sells would not have lasted longer or been better off by increasing its labor costs by 30% or 50% or whatever. And I think that's clear enough when I say it like that. What you see in the tweet response, what you see in the internet response is, well, maybe these folks shouldn't have had that job then if they're not getting severance and they're working these long hours, and they would have been better off if Telltale did go under 2 years ago, or if they would have had to deal with this union. And I can't tell them they're wrong. What I can tell them from my perspective is that I am very uncomfortable telling people what they should be willing to work for and at what rate. So if they want to join a union, great. if they want to kill themselves for X amount of dollars because that's what they want to do, I think they should be allowed to. And that's where sometimes we miss each other on the internet and online, because ultimately what a forced union is and what forced severance are is this statement from afar that says, we know better than you how to protect yourselves. And so you should not be permitted to work at this rate of dollars or without this protection because we don't think you know what you're doing. And I think that that's interesting. I don't like that from philosophically, from a legal standpoint, but I can understand why people want to get there. They want these people protected, and I'm empathetic to that. And I think instead of saying X, Y, or Z should happen, what I would like to take from the Telltale situation is to say, no, these people didn't get severance. And that's very risky. That's a big problem living in the San Franciscos of the world if you're just gone tomorrow and you don't get any severance. So let's make sure people know what it is that they've contracted for. What is the deal? That when you sign an at-will employment contract, which is 95% of all contracts in America, something along those lines, that this is what it looks like. And if you're not comfortable with that, you ask for more money so you can put it in a nest egg, or you ask for a severance provision in your contract. And people need to know what it is that they've agreed to so that they can better protect themselves. And if they don't realize what they are risking, what they are exposed to, you never have that conversation and you never have that negotiation. So from my perspective, I look at it and say, okay, this is bad, but rather than after the fact, let's have everybody wake up. And if this is important to these people, if this is important to these groups, to say, yeah, all right, let's ask for severance. Let's put that in the contracts right now. And okay, maybe the company, if it runs out of money, goes under 3 months early, but they get us that severance. Now that's all with the understanding that not only were they mismanaged, they really handled the firing the wrong way too. I'm not sure what legal counsel they were getting at the time.
Hold that thought on the firing, because we're definitely going to hit that. I don't want to get too Telltale heavy right now. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, I have a question. Can a parent company insulate themselves from legal action by having the employees independent contractors?
So California has some very specific definitions for an employee that's based primarily on hours instead of their standing. But in general, you don't need that particular insulation for the issue we're talking about right now, because contractors and employees are both generally at will. So when you talk about the contractor employee distinction, it's usually more useful in avoiding unions, avoiding collective bargaining, and avoiding, in general, international regulations and regulations related specifically to employees under whatever state you're operating under. But for this particular purpose, which is, should severance be owed, should WARN Act notice be given, employees and contractors are not that distinct.
Okay, because I run two companies, and under both companies, my employees are independent contractors. So we facilitate the insurance and the stuff like that. We steer them in the direction of who that they should have insurance with, but we don't provide insurance for them.
And there's reasons to do that, and recommendations for small companies and companies that are doing specific things are absolutely that independent contractors make more sense. It does expose people to certain risks that they wouldn't have necessarily under employment, but it can also get them more dollars in their pockets because you don't have that same kind of compliance issue.
Why do you think, real quick, why do you think there's this sort of divide between highly skilled workers and not being more so at will employees rather than lesser skilled in sort of like job types that are the ones that are being unionized? Is there something, is it the amount of competition there is at these higher levels that sort of makes these jobs be more at will and not be able to unionize these sort of positions? Like when you talk about like game developers, very technical jobs.
Well, we're talking about essentially my thoughts on philosophy and why these things happen. So obviously it's all speculative. But I would say in general, unionization, because of what it does, which is it combines a big group of people into one collective bargaining unit, tends to work best for jobs and job types that are relatively interchangeable, that the people within the collective bargaining unit have very similar interests and are incentivized in the same way.
Right.
And when we talk about high-end artists, when we talk about high-end professionals, it tends to make less sense because we have very different skill sets, and we're impacting the bottom line or the strategic structure of the company in very different ways. So maybe Bob and Susie shouldn't be treated in a similar collective bargaining unit because they do such different things and need to be motivated and incentivized and compensated in a different way for what they're achieving. Which is a long way of saying the history of America on unions has been that line workers are unionized and management is not, for the most part.
Right.
And that stems from that kind of interchangeability is too strong, but you can see where the biases are. They're more interchangeable than management is thought to be.
Right.
Fair enough. Lord Ak, you have any questions you want to jump in and finish up the Q&A?
Yeah, I had a quick question about the Fortnite and PUBG scenario.
Woo!
When it comes to, I know there's a lot of speculation when it comes to working in. I'm kind of curious when it comes to that in general, on your professional opinion, when it came to that particular case. Did you obviously you wouldn't know what's going on behind those closed doors, but I'm just kind of curious on what happened, the reason that PUBG dropped it, because I feel like they wouldn't have started unless they thought they had something.
Well, I mean, I think there was a Help Us Out Hoeg on this.
Yes.
I will say the PUBG Fortnite claim, and I think that's Bluehole versus Epic,
Yes.
was an interesting one, primarily because PUBG was made with the Unreal Engine. So unlike other circumstances where, as you probably know from your copious listening to Help Us Out Hoeg and reading of legal materials, you can't protect an idea. So you can't protect by registering the notion of a battle royale game. What you can protect is your personal expression of that. And so PUBG can't say you can't have circles, you can't come down from flying things, you can't do these things that Fortnite does. But what they could potentially say is, hey, Epic, you helped us work your Unreal Engine to do these 17 things that it couldn't otherwise do in order to make PUBG work. And as part of our license, there were probably some kind of confidentiality and intellectual property assignment provisions in that contract, and we think you breached them. And I think that's what gets them in the door. That's what gets them started out in having the conversation. I don't think they ever had the intestinal fortitude to bring it to completion. I think something like 99% of disputes don't wind up going through to trial and resolution.
Is it pretty much like a bluff a lot of the times? People are trying to bluff.
Yeah. What do you think the intent is if they know they're not willing to go the other way? What's the advantage of that?
It's to present that way. I think bluff's a good word. Is to say that I've got pocket aces. And I'm willing to take it down. And Epic says, no, you don't. Let's do this. I call it.
My pockets is big and my lawyers are strong.
Yeah.
Was trying to come in with that pocket aces. But if you settle out of court, then we won't have to go that direction.
That's right. We don't know.
Trying to pull that.
Yeah, well, for a litigation, for the most part, especially if it's not a real significant one in terms of damaged dollars, you know who makes the money in that? It's the lawyers.
Right.
You're both sides paying the lawyers. But what I said in that Help Us Out Hoeg was one thing I could see was PUBG essentially trying to use it as leverage to lower their royalty on the Unreal Engine. Epic makes money on every sale of PUBG.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
One question.
Go ahead, King.
In that whole scenario, can Bluehole be purchased by another company while in litigation against Epic?
Yeah, I mean, I think
would they have to end that litigation before they can be purchased by another company?
No.
Did Microsoft did they end the lawsuit so Microsoft could buy them? I know where he's going with this.
No, they wouldn't have to from a legal perspective. So one of the things that happens when you enter into a purchase agreement is there's a big section that we call representations and warranties, and that's just promises about the company. And one of those promises would be, we don't have any litigation, or if we do, here's what it is. We've disclosed it. And then there's a document called the disclosure schedule that puts down all the exceptions to the representations and warranties. And in that disclosure schedule would be, yes, we're currently being sued by Epic. I think they cross-sued on that. And we are currently suing, I believe, some other Asian developers for copying PUBG. Mm-hmm. And those would all go on the disclosure schedule. And then Microsoft or whomever would look at that and take that under advisement when setting the indemnification provisions, when setting the purchase price, when setting the terms of the agreement to say, okay, no company's perfect. Here are the warts. And those warts are going to reduce your purchase price by $2 million so that we can hold it back in case something bad happens. Or we think that there's a possibility that you're going to gain assets this way. So we're going to give you a bump up on the purchase, but whatever it looks like, here's how your company is and we'll adjust in the money.
Okay.
Fair enough. Wow. Any other questions? Because I was going to close up and then get into the topics.
I mean, I just had to get to that part.
No, I wanted you guys.
I know you good acquisition target.
I want to capitalize a little bit on what King David said. Now, since they, you said chances are they wouldn't have any kind of legal obligations to be in any kind of, lawsuit. Is there, from your personal perspective, have you seen companies that don't want to approach someone while they're currently in a lawsuit and they want to make sure that's cooled down before they even do it?
I would say in general, acquirers would prefer more certainty rather than less. And a lawsuit is always going to be a variable. So in general, they might say, hey, wait till that gets sorted out. Apologies. And then we can say what you're really worth. So they might say, hey, sort it out, settle it, whatever, and we can reevaluate.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
That was a possibility.
First of all, salute the Lord Hoeg for answering the questions in the realm. The chat was lit. Everyone's loving it, man. Lord Hoeg dropping the gems today. So if anybody has any questions, we'll get to the fun. So Lord Hoeg, I know you are a man of legal and gaming respect. However, I saw your top 10 list for games of 2018, and we need to bring you to the front of the congregation, sir.
Current.
This is my good friend, Lord. I love his tweets, man. This is all good fun. So number one, you had Star Control Origins, which I have not played. I'm a Star Control fan, so I have to play it before I reserve judgment. But the fact that you have it number one speaks volumes.
Way, way better than I thought it would be.
Exactly. So I'm impressed that I have to touch that. Number two, you have Spider-Man, which is to Lord King's happiness. I know he loves that. 3, you have Prince of Eternity. 4, Dead Cells. 5, a little questionable. 2 Point Hospital. 2 Point Hospital.
I love 2 Point Hospital. You guys get a chance to play that?
I have not. That's why I cannot go in on you.
Have you played Team Hospital from Bullfrog back in the day?
I have not. I've never played a hospital game. And it's sad because I believe, isn't 2 Point, is that the Sega made one? Isn't that Sega made? Oh, publisher?
Yes, Sega is publisher. 2 Point is developer.
And I had my eye on it, and it looked interesting. So I have to give it a shot. So I cannot go in on anything I have not played. Okay. Number 6, God of War. Fantastic. And then we get to number 7.
What did I put in 7? I don't even know.
This is what I have. You had the Nintendo Labo product line.
All right. All right. So
I need a full explanation on this, Lord.
Sure, I will give you a full explanation. I have 2 daughters that want to be scientists.
There we go.
That's really the extent of my explanation. I'm a guy that loved Epcot Center. Okay. I'm a guy that loves edutainment.
Okay.
And the process of putting these things together, getting them put together, and then I don't know if you guys have partaken in Labo yourselves, but part of what they do with those is, how does this whole thing work? What's the science behind it? How do these levers work? Simple machines. How do the infrared sensors work? And I think that is just absolutely fantastic.
It works because Nintendo
anything else on the market.
They're practicing witchcraft or something over there to make that stuff work.
I think he's making a Labo right now.
I had to tease you a little bit, but you know what? When you put it in perspective, as a Lord that has 2 children, 2 daughters, I see where you're coming from. I see where that creativity is enabled with something like that, and to be able to enjoy that with your kids. I can kind of let you off the hook.
I love innovation, and I always tilt towards innovation, and I think Labo is really cool and something I haven't seen before.
No doubt.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Rounding out his list for the Lords who didn't know, he had Octopath Traveler, Dragon Quest 11, and Detroit Becomes Human. So solid list, but I had to ask, obviously, number 7.
A lot of Sony exclusives on that list, so that's very good. And being that Spider-Man was ranked higher than God of War, hello.
It isn't that close for me, so there you go.
There you go. That's right.
I got to explain Labo about videos. Yes, but I had to tease him. It was a perfect.
No, you can tease me. You tease me. You know, we mentioned people yelling at me for my Polygon takes on Twitter. I tell you what they yelled at me about a lot is me saying that God of War was only an 8. I got a lot of responses there.
You know what? And I concur. I
liked it. I enjoyed it. I just didn't. It wasn't a life-changing experience.
I need it.
Yo, listen, it's called reality. We are drinking reality juice. If you notice, he was drinking some reality juice too, as well as myself.
I can respect it because I know he beat it.
Well, that's nice. I didn't. It's still an 8.
I did beat it. But I am, I mean, if I was being snarky, I'd say I'm really very much looking forward to God of War 2 when the story actually starts.
There we go. Tell him about it. Let's go for it.
I have to give him that. Like, it was definitely, there wasn't a huge spike in the story. Like
I know, but Spider-Man got a huge, nice story. Hello, tell him about it.
No, that is.
I don't know what I walked.
Have you even beat Spider-Man yet?
Oh, no, I haven't, and I can tell you, stop worrying about me beating it. But I'm gonna beat you. That's the whole thing. You know what really matters?
Like, how do you know Spider-Man has
me and this little guy right here is gonna show up at your door. We want your knees on the floor.
If I lose the bet, I lose the bet. I still want to know how you know the game has a good story when you ain't beat it.
Just for context, Lord Hoeg, there is a bet between Lord King and Lord Act in reference to God of War versus Spider-Man, and obviously in terms of the first month sale, we know that God of War when it launched it did 3 million. Spider-Man has done 3.3, so King is currently in the lead. And then once the month numbers, we wait for our good friend Lord Matt Piscatella to come on the show and drop that knowledge, hopefully, and we'll get the month numbers because that's the bet. They wanted to; those two are going at it in reference to who's actually going to outsell for a full month. So it's been intense as we're getting closer to NPD.
Wow. Either way, those are some pretty big sales numbers for both. So Sony is partying in 2018.
All right. You know it, man. And last question before we get into the topics. Lord Hoeg, I ask this to everyone, top 5 video games or franchises of all time. And if Star Control's not on the list, we're gonna have to talk.
Oh, all right. Yeah, number 1 is Star Control 2.
Woo. Okay.
Number 2 is Final Fantasy 6.
6. Interesting.
Yeah. Number 3 is going to be Chrono Trigger. Number 4 is probably Witcher 3.
Woo! Oh, Lord Sam Tober's loving you in the chat.
And then 5 always seems to jump around for me.
What's 5?
But it's probably something off the wall like Privateer 2 or something like that. Something old school in full motion video.
No, I love that FMV, man. You're taking me to the studio days.
No Stuart Shark.
You're taking me to the studio days.
Shark, yeah. No, it's probably one of those. Some space combat game of some kind. Some Privateer 2, Wing Commander 4, something like that.
Oh, Wing Commander.
You just read about Matt Hoeg because I was gonna when you talked about full motion video doing your 3DO segment with Star Control and stuff, and that's what I remember. Like 3DO for Wing Commander, and when you're doing the dog fights and you have the full motion video of the guys, aliens talking to you.
I could still make my brother laugh by saying you got 4.
Yeah. Salute Lord Hoeg with the impressive list. Let's get into the show. The topic, we got a lot to do to keep this thing going. Last week's poll results are in, and the people have spoken to the question. With the recent success of Nintendo mini systems and Xbox backward compatibility title sales, is Sony hypocritical for announcing both the PlayStation Classic and PlayStation Now download features after previous statements of gamer non-interest? The winner at 54% was the yes. Sony was lying until they saw the profits of the Nintendo Mini Systems Group. Coming in at second place at 40% was the no. Pure business move. Sony is adapting to the needs of the market group. And coming in at last place at only 6% was the I don't care who's playing these ancient relics anywhere group. Thanks to the Lords who participated in the poll. Lord, I'm actually going to ask Lord Solve this. Lord Solve, what do you feel about this, man?
I mean, they adapted to the needs of the market because they saw.
Oh yeah, I see where you voted.
No, I voted, but the thing is, like, the second one is worded in such a way that it's like, yeah, they adapted because they saw what was winning, and they went to my issue with it is that they copied it verbatim. They didn't change anything. Come on, like, listen. All these companies copy off one another in one shape. From that, they evolve something, they take an idea, they evolve whatever. Mm-hmm. This was just, they said, we're doing the exact same thing you're doing. Mm-hmm. Here, take this. Mm-hmm. And it's like, come on, guys, give me something different, man. Do something different.
Lord Hoeg, how did you feel about the announcements of the PlayStation Classic as well as the ability to download games to your hard drive from PlayStation Now?
The PlayStation Now download doesn't really affect me. The PlayStation Classic, I went and pre-ordered when it was announced, basically because I didn't want to get left behind in case that proved a problem. It's one of those things where I do think Microsoft and Xbox has the better of it in terms of backward compatibility right now.
Yes, right.
I really love being able to pop a disc in there or otherwise spend a fairly nominal amount to download whatever it is I'm missing and play it on my Xbox One X. So while I really like the novelty of my mini systems, and I'm going to build a tiny little dollhouse to be exactly the size of my little I do wish that the PlayStation 4 had a more robust infrastructure for the PlayStation history.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. All right, so Lords have a new poll cooking up at the end of the show. Please stay tuned for that. Let's get into these topics. All right, so I am up, and we're going to breeze through this because we kind of, Lord Hoeg kind of actually went in a little bit already in the Q&A. So Telltale, they've been warned, so to speak, and may find themselves in legal trouble regarding the layoffs. So first of all, I definitely want to salute Lord Mike Futter for his tremendous article at GameDaily.biz, as well as Lord Hoeg himself with his tremendous insight and contribution with this. So what's in question here pretty much is this WARN Act, and it's pretty much requires employees to be notified in advance in the case there's layoffs, and pretty much it's the acronym is the Worker Adjustment and Retraining Notification Act. So nice. Yeah, pretty much. Thank you. From a lawyer, I'll take. So yeah, pretty much it's something to protect the employees and the families of those who are laid off, and of most employers with 100 or more. So to provide 60-day calendar day advance notice whenever there's mass layoffs, mass closing, and in this case, it may not appear to have happened. So a salute again to Mike with the tremendous article. Please check it out if you haven't seen it. And pretty much they've been named Telltale's been named in this as a defendant in this WARN Act class action lawsuit, and I believe the gentleman is Vernie Roberts. So he's going to be taking them to court, and the suit demands payment of unpaid wages and benefits. And like I said, the issue comes down to is Telltale going to be responsible for this? So based on what you know and your input on this, Lord Hoeg, I got to start with you. What do you feel about the basis of this WARN Act, and if they're in violation with this class action lawsuit?
Yeah, so obviously with the same disclaimer as always, which is not legal advice and informational and educational only.
I love it. Disclaimers, baby. I love
it. The crux of it is the WARN Act was put in place so that companies couldn't just evaporate large numbers of jobs without giving people a warning and letting them look for a new landing place. And that warning period is 60 days. What happened here appears to be that the company was seeking funding, had funding lined up, had a term sheet entered into in all likelihood. And then when the definitive documents were about to be signed, probably one, we know Lionsgate at least, but maybe more than one financing source backed out. And then that cascaded the financing. Once your lead backs out, everybody looks at it and says, well, I don't want to do it if it's not X amount of dollars. And so it all falls apart. And then the next day they say, oh, we can hit this payroll and no more. And goodbye, guys. And that's a WARN Act problem because California's WARN Act is different than the federal WARN Act. So the federal WARN Act says if you've got a scenario where you're capital raising and it falls through, if you close a whole plant, the vernacular obviously leaning more towards manufacturing, but it still generally applies under the way the statute is written. If you close a whole plant, then it's not your fault. You tried. We don't want to penalize people that were trying to make the company work and it didn't work out. If you don't close the whole plant, then you don't get to use that exception. Instead, you wind up in an exception that says, if there were unforeseeable business circumstances, then we're not gonna ding you either. So the Federal WARN Act gives you this kind of gray area to say, oh, we were going to get money. We thought we were going to get money. We have every reason to believe we were going to get money. We have people coming in next week. We just hired people this week, and it didn't happen. And so we're very sorry, but we have to go away.
Right.
California, like many states, copies the federal law and changes it in little ways.
Okay.
What they did to apply to Telltale is they took the federal law, and there's an exception for capital funding, capital raises that fall through. There's an exception for contracts that are of a specific term, things like that. But what they didn't bring over to their version of the statute was this exception for unforeseeable business circumstances. So because the capital funding provision only applies to a full closing, we start to talk about whether Telltale is fully closed. And they're not.
They're not, because they still retain staff. Yeah, you're right.
They kept on 25 people to help finish off the Netflix contract.
Right.
And they don't appear to have fully closed. So because California doesn't have that business circumstances test, I think in all likelihood, Telltale can defeat a federal WARN Act violation claim. They probably can't defeat a Californian one.
Gotcha. So just to stop you for one quick second.
Absolutely. I can talk forever.
No, again, you're breaking it down. And I believe the third exception was like on the federal level was actually like a natural disaster or something to that effect, right?
Terrorist attack. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Okay. So that didn't happen, obviously. So the thing is now, what was filed at this point by Vernie, Robertson, these guys at Taylor? Was this on the federal level or on the Californian version of the WARN Act? Do we know that right now?
My understanding is he filed in federal court for a violation of both.
Gotcha.
So, and I tweeted this out because I was in this article that Mike put together.
Yes,
that timing was crazy.
Article. Oh yeah. You guys killed that. You and Mike. Yeah, salute.
But I did mention that the federal, just what I said just now, which is that they probably can beat a federal claim, but they filed for federal anyway. And what I tweeted out was, from a legal strategy point of view, yeah, you file both because they still have to prove that it was an unforeseeable business circumstance. Gotcha. And you might win that. You never know. So you file both. I think they probably get the federal one defeated, but I don't know what argument they could have against the California one, which is what I wrote in that article, which is from where I'm at, which is a Michigan lawyer some 1,000 miles away, but looking at the statutes and looking at everything else, I don't see how they can beat the California claim.
Wow.
So then you start talking about, what does that mean? Yeah, they wind up owing these people 60 days of wages. They didn't get 60 days of work, so it's just a penalty amount. And where does that fall under the amounts that Telltale otherwise owes to people like their landlord or the people that bought The Walking Dead final season? Those people that bought that season are what we call creditors of the company. They have given money to the company and haven't received the assets they purchased.
Yes, and it's funny you brought that up. I just want to cut you again, real quick.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Thing. I know. I got like to talk myself. The thing it reminds me of is I was a fan of Marvel Heroes, and when it finally came to console, and I believe the company was Gazillion, and this is eerily similar to that, where they brought it to console, and then the company just goes under, and then at that point, everything that was kind of owed to us. I remember purchasing packs of future content or whatever it may be. So like you're saying, you kind of mentioned like a creditor status. Like, so at that point, for those people who bought the latest season of Walking Dead, right? Is it going to be most likely be a similar situation where they have to credit these people? Because I believe, I was credited as in reference to Marvel Heroes when that situation happened.
So when I say creditor, I mean that like they're like a bank. They've essentially lent money to Telltale, and Telltale is supposed to do something to earn that money. Mike actually has an excellent article if you go into his stuff on Game Daily where he discusses the notion of unearned revenue, which is an accounting term, but it basically means what I'm saying here, which is that you've gotten paid and you haven't delivered your side of the bargain yet. So in the case of Marvel Heroes, and isn't it interesting that we're talking about these two circumstances that both relate to third-party licenses and what those business models look like? In that case, it's a matter of who is partnered with them, what kind of damage control they need to do. I don't know what kind of credit you got, whether that you got anything from Sony Direct, whether you got anything from Vermilion, but it's a matter of what assets exist. I mean, when we're talking about if they lose this Warnak case, if they've otherwise not got a Walking Dead season 4 or whatever the final season number is done, who gets paid? And that's what I talked about on my Twitter, which is if I've got a sack of $50 and I owe $100 and you want to throw the employees in there with a Warnak claim, that's fine. But if I owe $100, it's not a matter of evil or what's trying to be despotic. It's a matter of this is the money we have. How does it get divvied up? Because people are going to experience pain. Who deserves the pain? Who gets the pain? Depends on what the contracts say. Depends on how a bankruptcy estate would treat the assets. That's why the Warnak claim isn't silly, is that it can get you a space in line in that process. But it doesn't mean they're going to get 60 days of money. My guess is that doesn't exist.
So in those cases when it doesn't exist, then what happens? Like these guys just don't get anything, because they just don't have it.
When a company goes under, it has hard assets. A software company is going to have furniture and computers, and it's going to have some cash amount. It's going to owe money to probably its licensed partners, depending on what it owes under its royalty agreements. It's going to owe money to the people that bought The Walking Dead season 4. It's going to owe money to its landlord and for any contracts that it breaches if it does go under. And it's potentially going to owe money to its employees under a Warnak claim. And then we decide who gets a quarter and who gets a dime and who gets a nickel.
Wow. Yeah. There it is. Any of the Lords want to chime in? Lord Addict, you any feelings on this, the whole Telltale thing, man?
Not really.
And there you have it.
I find it upsetting, but I understand how business works, and I understand that they were put in a box and maybe they didn't disclose it to the employees because they didn't want to affect the work rate, and they were hoping that this bag will come in, and the bag didn't show up. And when the bag doesn't show up, everything goes left, and they have to be truthful and honest with these guys. But as far as keeping the business open with 25 employees, that was stupid.
We're guessing, but my guess is based on what we know, the 25 people are putting Minecraft through for Netflix. If you remember, they had a Netflix contract for Stranger Things. And my guess is they came to an arrangement about what would be considered a breach and what money they would owe to Netflix. And part of that solution was you'll finish Minecraft for us. And my guess is when you're in these crisis scenarios, you don't always call your labor lawyer and you don't always figure out what the potential problem with that approach is. And so I think they foot faulted. They slipped accidentally into a Warnak violation. I think it exists, but they were trying to appease Netflix and not get sued for whatever Stranger Things money had already been given to them, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Gotcha. Lord Sovereign, any input on the Telltale situation?
Just quickly on that, because I know there was some belief online or confusion as to how that works, how they get those licenses. Are they paying these license holders to use the license in their games, or is it sort of somewhere in the middle, or is it vice versa?
They're paying them. Yeah, they're paying them. The question is how much money was paid up front. How much do they owe for existing royalties, et cetera, et cetera. And where there could be a back and forth when I talk about Stranger Things money is sometimes there's an advance on what is going to be royalties. Sometimes there's here's this chunk of money for development and you can pay us back in sales, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know what that looks like. That's complete speculation. And what we do know is whatever Telltale was entering into, it wasn't working in terms of keeping them in the black. So those contracts could be god awful. I don't know.
Yeah, man. I'll finish up too. I just feel the whole situation is sad. I mean, when the way they started and just how, they just seem like this vibrant new company that had this new genre of narrative storytelling that really wasn't done before. I never forget The Walking Dead, season 1 and the emotional ending, and just to see, we were like, where is it going to go next? And, it definitely seemed like that maybe they just took on too much, and, they just had so many projects, Guardians of the Galaxy. I remember Game of Thrones. It was this one, that one. So at that point,
we're not strangers to companies closing. Data East,
yeah,
other companies of that nature that we've been through. I mean, our history in video games has shown us that if you don't stay, because Capcom was looking like they were in a precarious situation for a minute, and I was worried about that. But we've seen companies fall that were at the height. You understand, and have very good games. So I mean, these games are time capsules. Yeah, I understand. We are probably more upset about the employees than we are about the actual company, because we see companies go.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I guess it was a surprise to me. I'll be honest. I didn't think that everything was rosy on the Telltale side, but it was a surprise, because again, like it felt like they were just pumping out content constantly, and just to see like, wow, going under, effective, boom. And I'm like, whoa, wait, like
the bag didn't show up. The bag didn't show up, and we're left. The bag didn't show up.
But that's part of the mismanagement. I mean, your companies shouldn't be Thanos snapped out of existence, and that really goes to we should have had inklings. They should have been paring back. They should have been doing other things, and they weren't.
Yeah. I had to get something to say before we move to the next topic.
I think the biggest thing that happened with them, is I think it was fatigue. I think a couple like small little things they could have did. I think if the company would have dedicated every year to a certain game and not, I mean, why is it now that 6 years later we're getting the final season of The Walking Dead?
Good point.
By the time that happened, people didn't care.
Yeah, the argument is a lot of people felt that one, they didn't upgrade their engine fast enough. They would like just recently.
I don't even think it was that. I think
and the fact they didn't give what you said with the fans.
I think people were tired of that kind of engine, that kind of gameplay. But I think for the most part that they didn't pace their games correctly to actually capitalize on the sales.
With that whole aspect of it. Again, I'm gonna double down on it. The internet is a terrible troll when you can look at these story games and you can just sit there, eat a bowl of cereal and watch the whole damn story on YouTube by somebody playing it. But you don't have to actually go out and purchase
people doing that. There's a lot of people that do that, especially if you watch something like that on Twitch. You're probably not going to buy the game, but let's say, someone like me, I played the first two, I enjoyed the first two, but we're like 2 years from the last one.
Right.
So it's gotten to the point where I'm like, you know what? I just watch it on Twitch. I don't care anymore. Like,
so Attic, your point is more so that, while the fire is hot with the more famous ones, like the Walking Dead
not even like
and Wolf Among Us.
The only one I've seen them even remote, didn't they have two Spider-Man not Spider-Man, Batman seasons?
Batman. Yes.
See, that one looked a little bit more better pacing because by the time the second one came out, people were still remembering the first.
I see what you're saying. You're talking about that gap, that wait. So long.
It's just like you do have, and then I think that the time between the episodes is a little bit too far sometimes, and you just, when it comes to episodic games like that, I think you have two choices. You can either go the direction that that Until Dawn went, where you just released a whole season, and I think you'd have a little bit more better choice with that if you're not able to pop out the content in a reasonable amount of time, because it's like TV shows. Once about 2 months goes by, I'm already waiting for the season. I'm not trying to watch every episode individually anymore.
Listen, I hear there's a lot of factors here, man.
Yeah, I think what it comes down to is they didn't gamify that engine enough. It came to a point that why would I play this?
Say that, but
why would I play?
I think those engines lend to a specific group,
right?
And
But to Addict's point, right? If you look at Until Dawn, right? Until Dawn is one game, right? It's not seasons.
Yeah,
it's one game.
Let's say this, right? Let's say, okay, everybody keeps bringing up this Until Dawn. against these Telltale games.
Well, it's not even Until Dawn. Look at Detroit. Detroit did the same thing.
But okay, this is what I'm going to try to explain to you. Those Telltale games cater to a very specific crowd that can be either super casual, non-gamers, or hardcore gamers, right? That engine is palatable for those three criteria. Now you have the Until Dawn and the Detroit. They cater to two: the hardcore and the above casual, type of crowd. You understand? So super casual crowd is going to do it, and they don't want to look at the whole engine and stuff like that. It's just, I felt that, like you said, maybe it's true what you said, that they didn't come up with the next seasons fast enough, but maybe they took on too much. Too many licensees all over the place, and was trying to pump out all these different games. Like you had Guardian's Head, then you had Batman, and then on the back burner we do Walking Dead later. But people that wanted Walking Dead now then walked away from that, and then by the time Walking Dead did come out, they were like, "Oh, we're past it. We're watching on Twitch."
I think when it comes to that, the reason that they chose that direction, and I think that's another key reason why they went over under, is because Lord Richard, I'm pretty sure when they had that opportunity, they didn't know if that would be here 2 years from now, a year from now. So when they was able to get those licensing agreements, I think that, they grabbed them without really thinking the consequences to take too much on.
Yeah, I hear you. Good. I'm sorry.
I tend to agree with the issues with Twitch. I think that Telltale was uniquely situated to get burned by people watching their product, and in an industry that's still dealing with folks that want to stream from Twitch, and justifiably so, they weren't able to do what probably they should have done, which is essentially ban their games from being streamed.
Yeah,
that would have been a public relations nightmare for them based on where the industry sits right this second. But in terms of the product that they actually have, there is value lost when what is primarily the source of interest from playing a Telltale game for me was the notion of getting into the character's head and deciding on how you're going to treat this answer to this response tonally, because it puts you into a television show or a book in a way that you wouldn't otherwise be. When you're playing something like Game of Thrones, which is one of their lesser works, but you have to say, wow, what are the ways that I could answer this where I don't get burned by Queen Cersei? That's an interesting thing. Even if you know that you're always going to get burned, it's still interesting to be like, what are my thoughts? And you get the 4 and you have the timer, and that's interesting, but you lose 90% of it from just watching it and not paying for it.
Absolutely. And the last point I'll make, and it was definitely more.
And one of the things that
get at it, and then I'm going to finish
they
off.
actually have a feature in some of the games where they integrated it into streaming services. So, I think they were trying to encourage that. They're like, I think, but when it comes to this, maybe they were undercharging for the product they were giving, because that's what a lot of people don't realize. This game was only $25.
All 25, right? Yeah.
So maybe they were undercharging for it. Maybe, if they would have invested more into an engine and had a better product, they could have charged 40 to 60 with the whole season. I mean, it's just a lot of different things.
But that was an impulse buy from me, because when I see a Telltale game, I say, "Oh, a quick 1,000 points."
Easy achievement.
But also, it's not breaking the bank to do so.
I would say the last year for me, because I felt the same way. But the last couple of seasons of content, even the 25 for me was like, I'll wait for a sale. I wait for everything $15.
And that's because that sensation of wanting to see what happens next left, because they took too long to give you.
Well, they were putting their season passes on sale before the season was I think that was noticed.
Yeah, let's move on. I mean, the last thing definitely we got to move on. It's just that my point I was going to say is that I felt like what happened is also another factor was that, unfortunately, that structure, even though you've made quote unquote significant choices during the middle of the game, and like Lord Hoeg was saying about, you got to see what you're going to say to Cersei and whatever, ultimately the game kind of got back on rails towards the end, and it didn't really branch off into completely different paths. I felt, you know what I'm saying, at the end, that where your choices kind of really wow, this game completely changed.
It wasn't a true choose your own adventure. It wasn't
and then
that.
Exactly. And I felt the competition then caught up. You had the Life of Strangers, you had the Detroits, right? Where they took upon that formula. The engine was better, and they had more significant choices. I can remember specific things in Life is Strange and Detroit where the game is completely different based on said paths and said choices. And I think they kind of like evolved the formula. But that's just my opinion. Whatever.
I'll give you that. There's a lot of people that took that concept and made it better, and they didn't evolve their own.
And they didn't evolve, and they kind of stayed with the thing. But we got to move on. Sure. Monumental news on the Sony front. Lord Addict, do you want to talk about crossplay? Or you want me to grab it?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Monumental news on the Sony front. Lord sleep.
No, I was talking to someone
cool.
in the room.
That's cool.
I mean, when it comes to the whole crossplay thing, what I really just wanted to bring up is, obviously we know now that Sony did cave to the crossplay, and I love because I made a video on YouTube, and when I use the word cave, you wouldn't believe how many people comment, Sony didn't cave to anything. They did it. I honestly didn't expect this, and I want to go around the table and just get your guys' overall opinion and whether or not
me like you about to.
Whether or not that this came from a position of weakness, or it was. I've actually been seeing on Twitter that people really believe that Sony has implied this, and it's been a long time in the going, but now they're actually launching it.
Lord Hoeg, what do you feel about the crossplay being allowed in Fortnite?
I think it's fantastic. I had said that I thought that they would give us cross progression at some point because I think it's easy enough to let the third parties have their accounts.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think that they would open the doors to cross play. I suspect that it was just easier to open the whole thing than not. But I think this is, I think I tweeted it out the day it happened. I think it's a huge, huge day for gaming.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it is fantastic for all gamers, no matter their console war persuasion.
Mm-hmm. the king had to bend his knee. It's the best part about that.
There was very few that could do that, but Fortnite could.
Fortnite was
by getting their employees $1.2 billion, I believe that they said they that game generated to the staff.
Mm-hmm.
That speaks volumes. Like this game is taking on a world of its own. Like I don't play the game, but I know tons of people who do.
Mm-hmm.
And to see that it took a game of this magnitude to force the knee to hit the ground for Sony, because we thought that wasn't going to happen. I actually thought it was never going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got the tweet, I said, what?
Yeah, they seem
because like the week before, they really had an arrogant tweet that went out, right?
I did. I wrote at E3 when people were launching their Switch Fortnites and getting that message that said, no, you once used a Sony one time in your life. No, you can't. That was going to play wrong for everybody. And to be truthful, I think that Epic was doing that deliberately. If you read that note, it's like, go talk to Sony. They're being asses. And I think it was workable. And I tweeted out at the time, I said, I think that Fortnite is going to break them. I did think it was just going to be cross progression. I didn't think it was going to be cross play. So I think that's going to open the floodgates, and I think it's going to be everything. I think, the next calls should be to Activision and Bungie and saying,
let's go.
Yeah, the thing that I do want to point out is I don't think people will. I don't think it's going to happen probably in the next year. I think sooner or later, devs, especially how it worked out with Fortnite, because they opened the floodgate. Now there's no shutting it. Like if they are seeing it with one, it's not going to happen for a little bit. But I do think sooner or later, after enough harassment to the other communities, the Destiny community, the Call of Duty community,
I don't see them doing it.
No, I see them opening it to them too, because these developers, they're all pushing for it. They are. I mean, but I don't even think
Fortnite is being played on Jimmy Kimmel's show.
I don't even think it was entirely Fortnite. I think Bethesda had something to do with it too.
Oh yeah, I mean they were very adamant in their press coverage
because every time this was even remotely dying, Bethesda would come out and be like, "Yo, they still ain't letting us do it." Like every time.
Yeah, but Bethesda doesn't have a game big enough to force the hand. It's like if your hand doesn't call for it.
If they use their actual games as leverage, Sony would have to cave. Fallout 76 being an Xbox exclusive would devastate that.
That's not happening.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They have the games, they're just not willing to use it.
Being that we brought up Bethesda in this whole situation, I wanted to comment on that because at the end of the day, obviously, they were very vocal. Before the Sony crossplay announcement, they were very vocal that they wanted it, especially for their Elder Scrolls Legend. And I believe it was Pete Hines from Bethesda. He basically came out and said it was pertinent to Legend that, this was so critical for the game to have crossplay. So the question I want to bring to Lord Hoeg with this is that, now that it is allowed, right? And as far as in the Fortnite situation, right? I've seen a lot of Twitter banter back and forth saying, well, now, Sony kind of exposed Bethesda's hand because now they've allowed it. So why won't you now allow it in or work towards getting Fallout 76 done? Because this statement right after Fallout, after the announcement with Sony and Fortnite, Bethesda actually said, no, we're not doing Fallout 76 anymore. That's already locked into not crossplay. So Lord Hoeg, what do you feel about this whole Bethesda thing involvement? Is Sony calling a bluff? Like what do you feel what about this whole situation?
No, I think the infrastructure is such that you probably can't turn on a dime. I think from Sony's perspective, it's great that they did this for Fortnite. I think it's baby steps for them. I think they still need to be shown that it's not going to negatively impact their bottom line, which I firmly believe it won't. I think it will be actually a positive for them, but they have to see that. And then I think what you're talking about really is a future of crossplay rather than a present. Fortnite's enough to break this because Epic was ready. Fortnite, I don't know if you remember, you saw a couple of instances where they had accidentally turned on crossplay. It was clearly just a dam that Sony had built. So it's a matter of Epic saying, great, you're in Sony, and we hit the button, versus Sony being very adamant to Bethesda and saying, you can't cross play. We're worried about safety or whatever other garbage they said. Leading to a Fallout 76 that is built to be separate. If there is a secret button, we haven't seen any indication of it. So I suspect you're talking about next year and the years beyond being in a situation where gaming community can come together
and play together. Yeah, ultimately, I think it's dope, and more importantly, like you said, I think for me, as great as crossplay is, I think the future is cross progression, and I think that was key as far as the whole Epic accounts being held hostage. You know what I'm saying? That wasn't right. If you logged into a Sony account machine and then, then bought a Switch, like you said, and you got that infamous message. We were out there on the floor, Lord King, you know what I'm saying? We remember like the Fortnite account was broke.
Hilarious.
I was angry. I'm an even-tempered guy. You can't do that, Sony. That's not right.
Yeah, and it was the negative. I've never seen such a negative backlash. And I spoke about this. Shout out to the Shop podcast. I was on with those guys last night, PTK Blam and the crew. And we talked. It was funny because I almost felt at that moment Microsoft and Nintendo sensed weakness, and then you started to see more of the marketing of survive together. You know what I mean? All that. We're playing nice and they're not.
The meme where it was like, sir, it was what was the survive together, and then on
Sony sounds like, okay, I guess so.
I honestly believe, Sony wouldn't have. It had to be something of a juggernaut, an unstoppable force to do this. And if that game doesn't exist in the form that it's in now,
I agree, King.
That doesn't happen.
It had to be, and that's the monumental nature of Fortnite, because it had to be a game of that scope, that size, to get them to even consider it. And I think King's on it. Like, I don't know if another game could have done Fortnite.
That's why you're saying like Destiny, and we're gonna do. It's not gonna happen.
No, I'm not saying that those games would have done it. I'm saying that since they've opened it to Fortnite, they have have given other publishers and
Right.
developers
That's right.
the
hope that it's gonna
opportunity
happen,
to
right.
ask for it. Too.
To probably ask for it, but then they're gonna say just like this. Well, when you generate 40 billion in sales, holla at us. Until you do that, then leave us alone. We're gonna say no to you. Get out the door and close it. So I honestly,
I think it's a one-time deal.
No, I don't think it's a one-time deal. I think again, if there's something free to play that comes down the pipeline that has this similar type of appeal, the question is going to come up again, right?
I don't think it was, Fortnite definitely was the key reason. And I don't even think it was, it was the pressure they're getting from the community. There's, you know how many times I saw people say, well, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and play it on PC because I want to play it on the Switch or vice versa or something else like that. Like all it takes, and the reason that happened is because that crossplay was already implied. So it put that pressure on Sony.
So do you think that if they get the same amount of pressure from the community across the board from a game that's considered like a less popular game, but the same amount of pressure, do you think at some point they cave?
You can't generate the same amount of pressure without the same amount of revenue. This is money driven. All right, you got to understand that part right there. It's money driven.
The issue that made this happen is that they locked the progression behind Sony.
The account was huge,
right.
That's what motivated it all, because people were upset that they couldn't take it somewhere else.
Okay, and that's the point that I'm saying. When you have millions of people who say, okay, I want to play it on this, I want to play it on that, and then I'm going to go home and I'm going to play it on my PlayStation, and then you log into your other thing that you wanted to play it on, and it says, nah, you can't do that because these guys said no, then that's when the upset happens.
See, that's what I'm saying.
When the sooner or later, but I don't see another game doing that.
Sooner or later, a lot more of these games are going to start to be more cross-progression, cross-platform.
For the other guy.
Once you see, imagine if something like Destiny was, the Xbox and Battle.net.
I would like to imagine that. Yes.
If that happened, but if that happened, can Sony say no at that point?
Yeah, because that's the question, King. Because the precedent now has been set. Like the floodgate is open. It'll be harder for them to deflect. But I do see your point, King, that you're saying it has to be another game of that stature.
It has to be like to come to the big boy table. You understand. You have to come with your chest out.
Here's the thing:
I don't see games doing that.
It's not going to be Sony caving to the consumers. It's going to be Sony caving to Activision because people are blowing their shit up every day.
Activision is not doing that.
Imagine, let's say that Destiny is, we're just going to use Destiny because we all play that. Destiny is a cross-play. Imagine, we could play with Abontis on Battle.net. How long can Sony take that criticism that they're not in that?
Let me give it to Hoeg, because I think Hoeg also said a good point, but in the sense that they have to present to Sony, hey, look how beneficial this is. Financially, right? They would have to, wouldn't you think, Lord Hoeg? Like they would have to do it in some fashion that way. The other companies.
Here's what I'll say. I agree with really both of you on this. I think that Fortnite needed to be as big as it is to make Sony listen. But I do think that every time this happens, and this might be the straw that breaks the camel's back, it becomes more and more likely that it will be the general approach to most of the games because the standard of expectation changes. Once cross-play and cross-progression is expected, it is much more clearly blocked when someone moves to block it.
I would say Sony is going to battle this one or two more times, but after they lose those battles, it's just going to be a standard for every game.
And I think the pendulum shifts. I think Fortnite is a big move, and I think. Yes, I would really like to play my Warlock on my PC. Woo! So, anything that moves us towards that will be very happy.
No doubt, man. So I'll finish up. Let's move on.
I approach it from a slightly different perspective. I understand all your perspectives, and they make absolute sense, especially when it comes to revenue. But I think with Sony, for me, at some point, the market leader has to take a position of leadership. And I mentioned this before, I feel once they got to a position of power, they were playing more to not lose as opposed to playing to win. When you let the number 2 and the number 3 guys take the lead on things like this, obviously they're taking the lead from a position of losing, where they need to do these sorts of things to appeal more to people and say, hey, look, we're doing right by the gamer. When when the person in power is not taking the lead on these big things, it's the optics are bad. And we've seen how the narrative can change on a dime. 2013, that narrative changed on a dime for Xbox. And Sony is not immune to it. As powerful as they are this generation, they're not immune to that narrative changing. They're just not. So
no, but that's what I mean is what it means to be for the players.
Right.
It shifts. And I think it shifted pretty significantly this last week and in a good way. And I think to the extent that for the players now requires a certain at least openness to cross-play and cross-progression, that's ultimately going to break the dam someday.
Yeah, right.
I think there's certain games and certain genres that once that genre's I think once the first-person shooter genre takes off in crossplay, there's no going back.
I wanted to know Phil's face when he heard they allowed it. Like, I know Phil just said,
you saw the Xbox Twitter account the minute.
I know exactly what happened. I could just picture him like I could just picture he did the same exact thing that King would do. Yeah, that's right, bend the knee.
He looked at and said, "Who did that for you?"
Oh my God!
I think it'll be good for everybody. So I think everybody. I think they sent a high five emoji. I think that was legitimate.
I think we'll see more cross progression than cross play, but sooner or later we'll see both of them more often.
To be honest,
you have to get to that space. That space has to be worked in because, like, the genesis of everything is like pure gaming, right? So we come from the whole culture of gaming has always been togetherness. We turned to this separatist type of mentality. I guess when the console wars really started happening, when they started making big bucks, they started separating us. And now we got to this point where we're at now, and we all want to come together now. Right. So, yeah, I can't wait for that.
I think, listen, at the end of the day, this is great for gaming. Is that Soft? That was you talking? Or Hoeg? I'm sorry, that was Hoeg. That was you. I didn't want to interrupt.
I didn't say anything.
No. Oh, okay. Yeah, no, just pretty much. I just think at the end of the day, this is great for gaming. You know, I honestly didn't think it would happen this gen. I thought it would definitely happen next gen. I didn't think. I felt Sony's in a position of power. There was no need for them to play ball, so to speak, and. It just showed me the testament of Fortnite. As much as I've had my little issues with Fortnite's ethics with the PUBG situation, you know, I have to give credit where credit is due. It's a phenomenon, and you know,
they
Sony
made
had
the colossal PlayStation bend the knee.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it happened. You know, they did acquiesce. So let's move on. This one will be super quick because we're overtime, and I know Lord Hoeg's Lions. Yeah, Lord Hoeg's Lions are going. So I'm just gonna ask this question specifically to Hoeg. We'll make this quick. And it basically, I've seen this in the Twitter community, and I want to shout out Lord Kofi. He's brought it up. I want to shout out Lord BG. So Weapon Will and Press Star. Shout out to those dudes. I've seen the feedback on Twitter, and it comes down to these dance emotes. And we all know they've been around. We know Destiny does it. We know Fortnite is definitely on the top of this list.
Forza Horizon 4 does it now.
Are you serious?
Yep.
Forza Horizon has dance emotes?
For the first time, Forza 7.
Crazy how trends change.
Forza 7 had it. So now you have an avatar that gets out of the car. You're not getting out of the car.
No.
But you have an actual avatar that you can customize and do stuff with. So yes, there are dance emotes.
It's crazy how trends change.
It's crazy. And then I know NBA 2K has always done it when you're walking around the My Park or whatever on the sidelines, you know, and you know, these guys Millie rocking and a lot of hip hop culture dances. So, you know, I wanted to bring this to Lord Hoeg and just to get the legal perspective here in the sense that, you know, we've seen a lot of pushback from these artists and predominantly a lot of artists from hip hop culture where they're saying, hey, you know, if you guys are going to, you know, take our dances, we should at least get credit for it. You know, we should at least be, if not any monetization, maybe a link to that artist's page so that the user who's playing the video game understands the origins of where it comes from, you know, because as of right now, a lot of these dances are renamed, right? I remember when Destiny had the whole Michael Jackson Thriller at one point. So they had the whole thing, the whole video. I was like, wow. Like, and even I always thought back then, like, how are they legal? Did they speak to the Michael Jackson state?
Oh, like, that's the thing about that. They didn't send my dance move over that I paid for.
Oh my God. But you know, the big ones are like I said, the Millie Rock and all these famous hip hop dancers. So Lord Hoeg, like from a legal standpoint, you know, is there anything that an artist can do to protect these moves, or is this just a lost cause, with litigation? How do you feel about that?
So the nature of litigation is such that anybody can sue anybody for anything. You can always make a claim. The question is, how quickly will it get defeated and kicked out of court? Dance moves and choreography in general, as an expression, can be protected under copyright, but it is one of the less litigated and more controversial. Isn't right, but not as certain types of protections that you can get. It's not like copywriting a book or trademarking a brand name. So when you talk about something like, say, the Thriller dance, you see that dance pop up in a number of instances. And I don't know if you remember in the original Plants vs. Zombies, there was a Michael Jackson zombie, and he did a little Thriller thing as he moved across the line, and that got changed. And if you think about that, the reason it got changed is that zombie originally had a sparkly red vest jacket and one white sparkly glove, and they said, well, that's clearly Michael Jackson doing Thriller as a zombie. And Electronic Arts said, yeah, all right, well, or it might have just been PopCap at the time.
They're like, yeah, you got it. So we'll get that taken care of.
Yeah, we'll say, yeah, all right, that's fine. And that's how these legal things often work, especially with big companies, is we'll do it and see if anybody comments. So one of my favorite parts of Fortnite, which I have played a significant amount of because I had to earn the lollipop girl for my girls for seemingly 50 hours over the summer, is that the initial dance is Turk's dance to Poison from Scrubs.
Okay.
So I love that show, and I noticed it immediately. And you look at that and you say, well, that's an existing dance. That's Turk dancing in Scrubs. And who can stop it? And one, probably nobody copyrighted that choreography. You could go talk to Donald Faison or whoever owns Scrubs at this point, but probably it's not that big of a deal. And if it proved to be a big of a deal, they'd get contacted from someone who has a plausible claim to the ownership, and they'd say, fine, we'll pull it, because that's not what's driving the sales here.
Right.
And for the most part, if something like Fortnite looks at it and says, yeah, if your dance is recognizable, chances are that's advertising for you. So when we talk about what's allowed, what's legal, what can get you sued, a whole lot of stuff can get you sued. The question is whether or not you can justify it in a way that makes sense to the party that might be able to sue you. So when we talk about streaming on Twitch, a lot of that probably isn't fair use. A lot of that, the person that owns the intellectual property rights to that video game could probably order a takedown notice and ask you to take it down and or sue you. But I
always say, Nintendo does it all the time. Like
Nintendo does do it all the time because they decided that it hurts them and it helps them. But the rest of the industry has basically decided it's good free advertising.
Right.
So it's a matter of what's allowed and who really wants to settle on what should be litigated. And in the case of Twitch, everybody's pretty happy with it being ambiguous, because if they decide someone's gone too far, they can send a cease and desist to them, and you can't really look at a court case that says, no, I'm allowed to stream this, I'm fine, because nobody's willing to go all the way in terms of litigating it. And that's useful both to the Twitch streamers as well as to the holders of the intellectual property. So for dances, you get a similar situation. Yeah, if I can identify the Beyonce single ladies dance, or I can identify Turk and Scrubs, then hey, maybe that's something that they have choreography rights to, but do they want to sue me? And do they want to make trouble? And chances are, if they had a problem with it, if Fortnite weren't cartoony and friendly and everybody loved it, but it was violent and had some other appalling aspects to it, you might have Scrubs or NBC, or you might have Beyonce, or you might have the state of Michael Jackson or whoever come and say, hey, I don't want to be on your murder simulator and take us off, or we're going to sue you. But Fortnite's super popular. It doesn't hurt anybody. You're not losing views of single ladies or for this being in Fortnite. You're just having people remember that, hey, that was on Scrubs. Maybe I should watch that on Netflix or Hulu or wherever it lives.
Right.
I want to follow up. I want to follow up. That's a great point. Sure. I want to follow up in the sense that the argument, I want to say the quote unquote ethical argument, right, is that what they're saying is, especially the hip hop community, is saying that a lot of these popularized dance, like at least if they were given their name mention of all the actual name, because a lot of times these dances, let's be honest, are renamed. When you open up Fortnite or you open up Destiny, like I remember seeing these dances and it was called something completely different in context to Destiny as opposed to the artist. You know, what about that aspect from the ethical side that, you know, at least if you're not going to give us monetization, you're saying, hey, you're giving us this free advertisement by even recognizing your dance move, but like, you know, could you at least credit the artist or something to that effect? Do you think they have any stance on that, or that's going to get like shut down?
It's hard. You know, the little guys, the choreographers that aren't represented by a big company and maybe did something cool, or they saw it on a YouTube video.
Yeah.
And Epic or Activision says, yeah, let's put that in. They don't have the money. They don't have the leverage. They don't have the threatening capability to come after them. So you could take advantage of it. And arguably that is probably unethical. For the borrowing between, you know, if Activision saw something cool on Fortnite and put in Destiny or vice versa, there's a come at me bro kind of aspect to it. Yeah, they can sue if they want to, but chances are, again, to the extent they link to each other, it's, hey, I saw that on Destiny. Oh, right, Destiny exists. I need to play Gambit for another 7 hours. That's something that that's unlikely to cause damage. So it's probably unethical to potentially the individuals, potentially the small actors. It might be illegal, but it's not. You know, if I were advising these guys, again, tweets not legal advice, podcast appearances not legal advice. It's one of those where, yeah, you're probably not going to get burned by it because somebody can't probably sue you. So yeah, let your ethics be your guide, let your moral compass be your guide. But from a legal standpoint, you're not probably talking about liability exposure.
Gotcha. Keeping it real, Lord Hoeg, man. Gotta appreciate you for answering that, man. Thank you so much, man.
Absolutely. Happy to be on.
Absolutely. Let's wrap this thing up, man. New ILP poll this week. With the recent announcement by Sony to allow Fortnite crossplay between multiple platforms, is it fair to now expect Bethesda to include Fallout 76 crossplay based on their previous stance involving Elder Scrolls Legends? The choices are A, yes, Sony has now exposed Bethesda's previous statements and called their bluff. B, no, unreasonable expectation for Bethesda based on the time frame of Sony's announcement. Or C, I don't care who's playing those buggy Bethesda games anyway.
Where is Anchorman?
That is the question. Those are the choices. Please rock the ILP poll when it goes up on Twitter. Lord Richard Hoeg, an absolute pleasure to have you in the realm of the Lords. Truly humbling for you to be here. Outstanding fan of your work, man. We couldn't get enough. Y'all, I could talk to you all day, but I know your Lions are playing, and we got to all get back to football. But I really want to salute you, man. Thank you so much for coming through. And where can the fine people find you, and what else do you have going on?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for inviting me on. You know, they can find me if they need business legal advice on Hoeglaw, HOEGLAW.com. Or otherwise, as I said, I'm talking video games and sports and Kavanaugh hearings and pretty much every day on @Hoeglaw, HOEGLAW on Twitter.
Woo! Salute, man. This guy, please, he is a fantastic follow on Twitter. Please follow Hoeg. Please, again, and for my lords that need that legal advice, please holler at your man. This guy really knows his stuff. You know, great mind. He's great in the community. True gamer, loves gaming, and an absolute honor to have you. And dude, we have to bring you back at some way. If there's any subject, oh, dude, it would be much appreciated because your insight is truly valuable. A lot of gamers don't understand how things work. We've learned so much today. Thank you again, Lord Hoeg, the firm without fear. That's what I call you.
Matt Murdoch.
Exactly. He's the daredevil of the community, man.
Yeah, I love when I retweeted it as soon as I saw it.
I said, that's what he is. I said, he is fearless, man. I love him, man. Salute to being in the realm of Lords and dealing with our foolishness. Lord Addict, what is going on? Where can the fine people find you? What you got going on?
You can find me on Twitter at Lord Addict ILP. I'm about to make a video actually on whether or not Destiny is too hard. So definitely look on that. I definitely appreciate Lord Richard for coming on.
Absolutely. Lord Solve lit in the realm as usual. Where can the find people find you besides playing Forza in 4K, ultra settings, all that craziness?
Yeah, that's basically where you can find me the next until Red Dead comes out, playing Forza and playing Tomb Raider. You can find me on Xbox Live, on Twitter, Lords the ILP, BX Sovereign on Xbox Live and PSN. Yeah, definitely a big shout out to Lord Rick Hoeg. I mean, I love the insights, man, because again, we as gamers, we're entitled, right? We want. We don't know what that takes. What it takes to get there sometimes. So it's always good to be brought down to earth.
Actually educated. Actually, that's right, man. Absolutely. Lord King lit out here in these Fortnite, Sony bending in these streets.
Addict, they're coming for you.
Oh, what's good? What you got going on, man?
First and foremost, Lord Hoeg, thank you for showing up and answering that question I had with the Disney Fox acquisition and Comcast in the sky. That was really plaguing me for a couple of days, and you really cleared that up for me. Because at first, I was afraid that Comcast was going to do what they was doing, raising the price of Fox and all that other stuff. But I see they came to a good resolution to it, and I just wanted to know where the money was going. Not like I was getting any of it. But okay, so you guys can find me at Iron Lords on Destiny in the clan that we're about to cut down. LordCognito and myself and Tack is going to sit together. If you have not played Destiny and you're in this clan and you have not played in the last 12 days, you are out. You are out. Unless you're godfathered in, and those people that know they are Channel 5 members. So that speaks volumes. So if you don't understand what I just said and you're 12 days out, you better log in and you better start getting in there work right now. Because if you got in just to get the whisper, fraud alert, you're done, son. It's over. All right?
People log in just to look at the orbit and leave.
You better do whatever you got to do. But Combat Talk with a sad one is going to come up. I'm doing my research to flush out the back end of it. Also, KOS is coming. You don't understand what that means, but you would know what it means soon. I can give you a view on some of the stuff that's piling up right there. So that's going to be part of the KOS, and I'll explain that later. But we have a lot of things happening. We have big announcements coming. We wanted to have a big announcement for you guys today, but intellectual properties and people came up and blocked us, so they send their lawyers out to shut us down.
They send their hogs at us.
Lawyers.
Did they? So but that'll get fixed, and we have a big announcement coming for you guys, and you will love it.
Yes, sir. Like I said, we wanted to break it, but we have to work out the kinks. We'll get that straightened out. And again, to double down on what Lord King was saying in reference to Lord Hoeg with the Marvel stuff, I want to implore you, Lords. I mean, he's a big fan. He has great content. He actually has a YouTube channel that I'm going to plug for him because he didn't plug it. Hoeg Law, please check out his YouTube channel. And he has a fantastic video on the MCU, the whole evolution of that, the culmination to Infinity War. Fantastic. And Lord Hoeg was also my source during those painful times of the Disney, Comcast, Fox, battlings of winning. And I'm like, Lord,
that's right.
Is it going to get finalized? And you're like, it's happening. I'm like, but I'm nervous. There's always a snag. Comcast is resisting. Like, why don't they bend the knee? He's like, it's going to happen. And he gave me that insurance. And sure enough, it did happen. So again, big MCU fan as well he is. So please check him out at his channel, Hoeg Law. Yeah, man, that's what I got. So as far as us, you already know we can find us on the Inner Circle Network, obviously in the affiliate. Shout out to all the people. The links will be in the description. Shout out to Lloyd Kaibatsu. We'll get the timestamps up. You'll know about that. And of course, the stream team, Lord Snaldo, all those guys, L Boogie. We're still working them. Everybody, old school style, all the crew. We're going to work to get this thing a little bit refined a little bit and get these guys on. So, that's what I got. And also Flashpoint, like I said, King said Combat Talk will be coming soon on the ILP channel. And Flashpoint 31 is currently up now with Ebontis. We're breaking down all the latest stuff in the economy. So for the hardcore Destiny needs, we got you on the Iron Lord podcast. And thanks once again, one last public service announcement, and I'll really close it out because I know we got to go, is I really thank you guys for spreading the word. It really means a lot. We're trying to bring high quality content, and the new Patreon subscribers, we really thank you. It really means a lot to us. So everybody, please enjoy your Sunday. If anybody else has anything to say, if not, we'll close this thing out. Peace.